بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، الحضور الكرام، أسعد الله أوقاتكم بكل خير. باسم سعادة الأستاذ الدكتور جمال سند السويدي، مدير عام مركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية، يسرني أن أرحب بكم معنا اليوم في المؤتمر السنوي الرابع والعشرين، حوار أبوظبي، تحديات وفرص التغيير في القرن الحادي والعشرين، والتي تستمر فعالياته لمدة يومين. ونبدأ مع الكلمة الترحيبية لسعادة الأستاذ الدكتور جمال سند السويدي، مدير عام مركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية، يلقيها نيابة عن سعادته الأستاذ مراد عبد الله البلوشي، فليتفضل مشكورا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب السعادة، الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أرحب بكم جميعا في رحاب مركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية الذي يحتفل بيوبيله الفضي هذا العام. أشكر لكم تلبيتكم الدعوة إلى حضور المؤتمر السنوي الرابع والعشرين، حوار أبوظبي، تحديات وفرص التغيير في القرن الحادي والعشرين. ويأتي انعقاد هذا المؤتمر انطلاقاً من إدراكنا المتعاظم في مركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية لأهمية استشراف المستقبل، حتى يمكننا معرفة ما يحمله من تحديات وفرص، ومن ثم طرح الرؤى والتوصيات الكفيلة بمواجهة هذه التحديات وتعظيم الاستفادة من تلك الفرص، وذلك على النحو الذي يسهم في دعم صانع القرار في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة، وهو أحد الأهداف الأساسية التي يسعى المركز إلى تحقيقها. الحضور الكريم، تمتد فعاليات هذا المؤتمر على مدار يومين، وتشمل 4 جلسات تشارك فيها نخبة من المسؤولين والمتخصصين والباحثين والخبراء، حيث تناقش الجلسة الأولى قضايا التكنولوجيا ومستقبل الوقود الأحفوري وآفاق التطور في مجال الطاقة المتجددة ومستقبل الكهرباء في مزيج الطاقة العالمي، فيما ستناقش الجلسة الثانية قضايا التكنولوجيا والتغيير في طبيعة الحروب والتكنولوجيا والأمن الداخلي وإدارة الأزمات في ظل التطور التكنولوجي. أما الجلسة الثالثة فستناقش الاستراتيجية الصناعية والتنافسية الدولية والاستراتيجية المبنية على المعطيات المكانية والتخصص الذكي والنظام الإيكولوجي وقضية التعليم في مجال الأعمال والاستراتيجيات الصناعية لازدهار مستدام. وأخيراً ستناقش الجلسة الرابعة قضايا الإعلام الجديد وأثره في القيم الاجتماعية والهوية الوطنية في ظل التغييرات العالمية ومستقبل اللغة العربية. حضورنا الكريم، لقد حرصنا ونحن نعد جدول أعمال هذا المؤتمر على أن يناقش القضايا الأساسية المؤثرة في صياغة المستقبل العالمي، لكننا لم ننسى في الوقت نفسه مناقشة قضيتين مهمتين للغاية بالنسبة لنا في العالم العربي، وهما قضية الهوية الوطنية في ظل التغييرات العالمية، وقضية التغيير ومستقبل اللغة العربية، حيث لا يخفى على أحد ما تتعرض له الهويات الوطنية الفرعية بشكل عام في النظام العالمي الراهن من تحديات وجودية تتطلب بذل كل الجهود الممكنة للحيلولة دون محو هذه الهويات وذوبانها. وتعمل دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة بشكل دؤوب من خلال مبادرات متعددة ومتواصلة أطلقتها قيادتنا الرشيدة على تكريس هويتنا الوطنية ومواجهة الأخطار الكبيرة التي تتعرض لها اللغة العربية، التي تمثل العمود الفقري لهويتنا الثقافية والحضارية. إن مركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية ما أنفك يواكب هذه الجهود من خلال المجالات المختلفة التي يعمل فيها، سواء كان ذلك في مجال خدمة المجتمع أو في مجال إعداد الدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية أو في مجال دعم عملية صنع واتخاذ القرار. أصحاب السعادة، حضورنا الكريم، أن التطورات المتسارعة التي يشهدها عالم اليوم تفرض علينا الاستعداد بشكل مبكر لكي نتعامل من خلال استراتيجيات فعالة مع ما يحمله لنا المستقبل من فرص وتحديات. وإنني على ثقة كبيرة بأن هذا المؤتمر بمحاوره المختلفة وبهذه النخبة المتميزة المشاركة فيه وما سيناقشه من موضوعات متميزة سيقدم رؤى عميقة وجادة حول كيفية مواجهة تحديات المستقبل وتعظيم الاستفادة من الفرص الكبيرة التي سيوفرها. أخيراً، يسعدني أن أرحب بكم مرة أخرى في ربوع دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة، وأدعو الله تعالى لكم بالتوفيق والسداد، متمنين لكم طيب الإقامة في وطننا الحبيب. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
كل الشكر لسعادة الأستاذ الدكتور جمال سند السويدي على كلمته. والآن مع الكلمة الرئيسية للمؤتمر ويلقيها سعادة اللواء الركن طيار رشاد محمد السعدي قائد كلية الدفاع الوطني في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة، فليتفضل مشكورا.
بسم الله، الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، السيدات والسادة الأفاضل، الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أحييكم جميعا وأرحب بضيوف دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة الكرام، وإنه لا يشرفني في هذا اليوم المبارك أن أقف أمامكم في مستهل المؤتمر السنوي 24 لمركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية لإلقاء الكلمة الافتتاحية، شاكرا لكم تفضلكم بالحضور ومثمنا للمركز الإعداد للمؤتمر والتنظيم واستقطاب هذا المستوى العالي من المختصين والمهتمين. وكما تعلمون أن دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة تواكب العصر بكافة تحولاته وما فيه من فرص وتحديات، وتتأهب لمواجهة المستقبل من خلال رؤية طموحة تجعلها في مصاف دول طليعة في العالم بفضل حكمة قيادتها برئاسة سيدي صاحب السمو الشيخ خليفة بن زايد آل نهيان رئيس الدولة القائد الأعلى للقوات المسلحة حفظه الله ورعاه. من هنا تعمل كافة مؤسسات الدولة على الإطلاع بدور طليعي لتحقيق تلك الرؤية الوطنية. ويطلع مركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية ورئيسه سيدي صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن زايد آل نهيان ولي عهد أبوظبي نائب القائد الأعلى للقوات المسلحة بدور هام في المساهمة باستشراف المستقبل وتحولاته. ويأتي المؤتمر هذا العام بهذا العنوان متضمنا محاور هامة ترسم ملامح الحاضر والمستقبل، مما يوفر ركائز هامة ومؤشرات تدعم مراجعة وإعداد السياسات والخطط الاستراتيجية التي تتقاطع فيها عناصر تقييم وتحليل البيئة الاستراتيجية مع واقع الموارد المادية والبشرية وسبل ووسائل تحقيق الأهداف المخططة في خضم ثورات تقنية متوالية وتنافس دولي تخوضه القوى العالمية الرئيسة من خلال توظيف واستخدام آليات استراتيجية غير نمطية وأدوات متجددة وأساليب مبتكرة وربما في حالات غير مسبوقة، وذلك في نزعة شرسة لتحقيق مآربها ومصالحها وبلوغ غاياتها وفرض التغيير في حالات كواقع مسلم به. إن قراءة واقع البيئة الاستراتيجية للأمن العالمي والإقليمي تؤكد أن التحديات حقيقية، ولكن بالقدر الذي عظمت فيه التحديات فإنه من الإنصاف أيضاً الإقرار ببروز الكثير من الفرص الواعدة التي تبشر بمستقبل مزدهر لكافة الدول التي تسعى لاستثمار ذلك وبناء أوطانها ورخاء شعوبها، وتتبنى استراتيجيات تراعي المتغيرات. تلك الدول القادرة على رصد المخاطر ومواجهة الطوارئ وإدارة الأزمات وتحمل الكوارث وتعويض ومضاعفة مواردها والتخطيط لتوظيفها بفاعلية. الحضور الكريم، إن أي نظرة للمستقبل لا بد أن تتم من خلال واقع التقدم التكنولوجي، ذلك أن تنوع وتعدد مقومات الاستقرار والتنمية والرخاء قد وفر الكثير من الأدوات التي أصبحت في متناول الجميع، وصار استخدام التكنولوجيا الحديثة المتطورة يتم على نطاق واسع جعلها ضمن أهم محركات الاستقرار والتنمية وعنصر أساس للتحولات، بل أصبحت تمثل بيئة استراتيجية بحد ذاتها تشهد قفزات نوعية هائلة وابتكارات تجعل ازدهار الذكاء الاصطناعي واقعاً حياً يصعب التنبؤ بمداه. ويأتي الأمن الوطني على رأس أولويات الدول، وقد شهدت السنوات الأخيرة حوادث ومهددات أمنية داخلية بالغة الخطورة في العديد من دول العالم، أدى بعضها إلى سقوط أنظمة دول وانتشار الفوضى وتقويض الحالة الأمنية وزعزعة استقرارها وتهديد أمن محيطها الجغرافي. وفي جميع الحالات نتج عن ذلك استنزاف كبير لموارد الدول في سبيل مواجهة المهددات الأمنية الداخلية، وتعطلت خطط وبرامج البناء والتنمية. وإذا ما أضفنا إلى ذلك الكوارث الطبيعية التي تنجم عنها أضرار اقتصادية واجتماعية ودمار وتهالك في البنى التحتية وقواعد الإنتاج الصناعي والزراعي، سندرك حجم التأثير على السكان وتعاظم عمليات النزوح والهجرة غير الشرعية والجريمة، وأثر كل ذلك على الأمن والتنمية. لذلك فإن من شأن الاستثمار الأمثل في التكنولوجيا والبنى التحتية وقوى الأمن والطوارئ أن يزيد من فاعلية الحكومات والمؤسسات والمنظمات لمواجهة التطرف والإرهاب والتمرد والتخريب والجريمة المنظمة وعصابات القرصنة الإلكترونية والأزمات والكوارث الطبيعية. السيدات والسادة، إن المتتبع للصراعات الدولية والتنافس القائم على تحقيق المصالح الاستراتيجية والتمدد بأنواعه ومستوياته وأهدافه والاستئثار بالموارد الطبيعية وإذكاء الطائفية ونشر الإرهاب سوف يدرك مدى التغير في تنوع الأساليب والتوظيف لأدوات غير مألوفة، إذ أصبح بإمكان ميليشيات متمردة في أي دولة فاشلة أو آيلة للفشل أن تزعزع استقرار الدول وتقوض الأمن الإقليمي وتؤجج الصراعات وأن توجد بؤرا للإرهاب وترعاها وتهدد سلامة المدنيين الأبرياء وتنهب المساعدات الدولية الإنسانية وتعبث بمصائر الشعوب تحت نظر من يدعون رعاية القوانين الدولية وحقوق الشعوب. وتعمل الجماعات الإرهابية والعصابات والميليشيات المسلحة على عرقلة خطط وبرامج البناء والتنمية، بل وتسعى إلى استهداف البنى الفكرية والموروث الحضاري، كما تعمل على بناء قدراتها العسكرية والتخريبية التي تمكنها من مواجهة الجيوش النظامية وقوى الأمن الوطني الشرعية للدول، وفي حالات أصبحت لديها القدرة على تكوين تحالفات عسكرية مع جيوش نظامية لدول أخرى تحارب معها أو بالوكالة عنها، مع تطوير وامتلاك القدرة على الاندماج مع وحدات نظامية لتنفيذ عمليات عسكرية وتخريبية مؤثرة، مما أكسبها خبرات القتال والقدرة على التعايش في بيئة العمليات العسكرية المعقدة والقدرة على التأثير على نتائج تلك العمليات. وهذا يمثل تحولاً خطيراً على أمن الدول ونقلة في أجيال الحروب تتجاوز طبيعة الحروب المعهودة، وخطراً يستوجب التعاطي معه وفق القوانين الدولية ومن خلال حلول جماعية وجهود دولية حازمة في سبيل هزيمة الإرهاب، وحتى لا يرى العالم مستقبلاً داعش الكبرى أو مثيلاً لها. لقد فرض هذا السلوك على الدول مراجعة سياساتها الدفاعية، وعلى الجيوش تحديث عقائدها وفكرها، وإعادة النظر في أساليب تنظيمها وتجهيزاتها، واستخدامها وفق أساليب تمكنها من القيام بأدوار تلائم التهديدات المحتملة وحروب المستقبل، ما يؤكد أن تغييرات جذرية تلوح في الأفق يمكن أن تؤدي إلى اختلال في توازنات القوى، من شأنه أن يزيد من مخاطر التهديدات وما ينجم عنها من مخاطر اقتصادية وسياسية واجتماعية تزيد من خلخلة التغيرات التي تطال العالم بأسره. سيداتي وسادتي الحضور، فيما يتعلق بالاستدامة والاستراتيجيات الاقتصادية والأمن البيئي والغذائي والطاقة، فإنه لا بد من فهم تام للبيئة الاستراتيجية وتقييم وتحليل دقيقين لكافة عناصرها ومتغيراتها، وتوظيف الخبرات وأدوات التنبؤ والاستشراف، والتركيز على البحوث العلمية الحثيثة والتقنيات الرائدة، وتبني استراتيجيات واقعية وشجاعة تؤمن احتياجات المستقبل في سبيل استدامة العمليات التنموية التي تهيئ وتوفر للاستقرار وتجنب الشعوب ويلات الكوارث والأزمات والصراعات. كما أن التشريعات والقوانين الدولية ستظل في حاجة مستمرة للمراجعة والنقاش على الصعيدين الإقليمي والدولي. وإن أي دراسات تتعلق بالاستدامة لا يمكن أن تتم بمعزل عن مراعاة وفهم النظام البيئي العام والشامل وظاهرة الاحتباس الحراري، إضافة إلى الدراسة الدقيقة والوافية للنظام الإيكولوجي وعمل البحوث المتطورة في هذا المجال، ذلك أن الزيادات الهائلة في أعداد سكان العالم وعمليات التدفق المستمرة والنزوح صوب المدن الرئيسة المكتظة بالسكان، إضافة إلى العوامل الديمغرافية الأخرى وتغير الأنماط السلوكية للبشر، كل ذلك يجعل من مسائل البحث والتطوير مجالات حيوية تستحق أن تنال أولويات وتتطلب رصد موارد بسخاء، ودعم مراكز البحوث والدراسات ومراكز الفكر المتخصصة والأكاديميات ومجالات التخصص الذكي. ومما يجدر ذكره أنه قد يبرز ضمن التحديات المستقبلية إيجاد المعادلة الذكية التي تحقق التوازن المثالي المنشود بين التخصصات التقليدية والتخصصات التقنية والذكية ووظائف المستقبل، ومواجهة البطالة وإفرازاتها الاجتماعية والأمنية والوظائف الحكومية. ولا شك أننا بحاجة إلى رؤية مختلفة للعالم تتعدى كونها رؤية متجددة في ظل تطور الابتكارات المادية فحسب، وإنما رؤية مركبة تتضمن الابتكار الاجتماعي وتتمحور حول دور الحكومات في إطار المفهوم العام النمطي الذي ظل سائدا لقرون، وذلك من منطلق إمكانية التعايش والازدهار في ظل بروز الظواهر التي تفرضها مؤسسات مثل جوجل وفيسبوك وتويتر وأمازون وأبل وغيرها من تلك المؤسسات، إذ يجب الاعتراف بمدى اتساع وشدة تأثير الإنترنت ومنصات التواصل الإلكتروني والاجتماعي، وأن ذلك لا يمثل سوى جزء يسير من قضايا أكثر تعقيداً. ويمكن القول إن الانفجار السكاني لم يحدث بعد، إلا أنه قادم لا محالة، تصاحبه تحديات ديموغرافية جمة وتحولات هائلة في أنماط السلوك الاجتماعي، وأصبح مفهوم التواصل الاجتماعي يتم ضمن نطاق شديد الاتساع، جعل من الأسرة كائناً متناهي الصغر ضمن محيط مترامي الأطراف من الأفراد ومن شخصيات وهمية تشكل في مجملها مجتمعات عميقة أكبر من تلك التي نعيشها حقيقة، وهي لا تحكمها تقاليد ولا تعترف بحدود ولا تلتفت إلى الوقت. وباتت هذه الجماعات والمجتمعات الافتراضية تساهم في حدوث تحولات ذات تأثيرات ثقافية واجتماعية متباينة، قد تتحول نسبة منها ليست بسيطة إلى تحديات أمنية. إن التأثير المتبادل ضمن كافة مناحي الحياة المختلفة يجعل من الصعب تحديد نمط ثابت أو تقليدي للتخطيط، بل يتطلب تبني أساليب علمية خلاقة، ولن يتأتى ذلك دون الاعتماد على العوامل الأساسية للتطوير كالتعليم والاستثمار في رأس المال البشري، سعياً لتحديد شكل المستقبل وأساليب إدارته وتخطيط شؤونه. كما يعد البحث والتطوير في غاية الأهمية لتحديد موارد المستقبل والعلوم المتعلقة بإدارة الموارد وشؤون الحياة، بما يحقق الاستدامة المنشودة. إن التحديات وحدة التحولات تفرضان واقع أهمية لعب أدوار تشاركية من قبل الحكومات والمنظمات والأفراد ومراكز الفكر في سبيل إحداث تحديدات نسبية تطال شكل وأثر المتغيرات والسيطرة على نتائجها وإفرازاتها، خاصة تلك ذات التأثيرات شديدة الخطورة، إذ يمكن أن يتحقق ذلك من خلال القيام بأدوار جماعية ركيزتها التخطيط الاستراتيجي العلمي، وبأن تتحلى بقيم الإرادة الجادة والعزم والشفافية والتعاون، وأن تمتلك موارد كافية ومتكاملة. ختاماً أيها الحضور الكرام، فإنه يجب الاعتراف بأن القضايا المعاصرة الآخذة بالتحول عديدة ومتشابكة وذات تعقيدات تتطلب دراسات وافية وجهوداً حثيثة وتخطيطاً قائماً على الابتكار والعمل المتوازن. ولا شك أن الحوارات الجماعية المتكاملة التي توفرها دور الفكر تمثل فرصاً ثمينة للتباحث وعرض مرئيات الخبراء ومناقشتهم لتقديم خيارات متعددة لمعدي الاستراتيجيات ولصناع القرار. السيدات والسادة، لنتوجه جميعاً بالشكر إلى سعادة الدكتور جمال سند السويدي مدير عام مركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية وأعضاء إدارة المركز لإتاحة هذه الفرصة الثمينة التي هي مواتية للخروج بنتائج إيجابية مثمرة بإذن الله، متمنياً للمحاضرين والمشاركين وللجميع التوفيق والسداد، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الشكر والتقدير لسعادة اللواء الركن طيار رشاد محمد السعدي قائد كلية الدفاع الوطني على كلمته. وأترككم الآن مع استراحة لمدة 10 دقائق، نعود بعدها لنبدأ فعاليات المؤتمر. نبدأ أعمال المؤتمر السنوي 24 حوار أبوظبي تحديات وفرص التغيير في القرن الحادي والعشرين، مع الجلسة الأولى تحت عنوان التكنولوجيا الحديثة ومستقبل الطاقة. ويترأس هذه الجلسة الدكتور إبراهيم الحجري مدير عام كلية الإمارات للتطوير التربوي. وأود قبل بدء الجلسة أن أشير إليكم حضورنا الكريم، ستجدون على مقاعدكم استبانة خاصة بأعمال المؤتمر نرجو منكم ملئها. تفضل دكتور إبراهيم.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سعادة الأستاذ الدكتور جمال سند السويدي مدير عام مركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية، الحضور الكريم، أهلا وسهلا بكم في الحوار الأول لهذا المؤتمر. وبداية ونيابة عن الجميع أود أن نشكر سعادة الدكتور على دعوته الكريمة لنا وعلى إقامة هذه المؤتمرات التي دائما تحتفي بحضور ما شاء الله متميز وخبراء ومختصين محليين وعالميين في مجالات ذات أهمية عالية في الدولة وخارجها. وطبعا هذا يعود إلى قيادتك الفذة وفريق عملك المتميز، وهذا المركز ما شاء الله فريد من نوعه ليس بس في المنطقة ولكن على مستوى العالم. مبروك عليكم اليوبيل الفضي، ونتمنى لكم التوفيق بإذن الله. واسمحوا لي سعادتكم والحضور الكريم أن أدير هذه الجلسة باللغة الإنجليزية. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first panel discussion of the conference agenda. My name is Ibrahim Al-Hajri and I'll be moderating this session on modern technology and future of energy. We have three speakers in this panel that are specialized and have extensive experience in the field of energy. Each speaker will be presenting for 20 minutes. So please write your questions down and then we'll open the floor to questions at the end of all the presentations. So is Dr. Steve Griffith. He is the Senior Vice President for Research and Development and Professor of Practice at the Khalifa University of Science and Technology. He oversees all the research enterprise. So welcome Dr. Steve, and he will be talking about technology and the future of fossil fuel. Please help me welcome Dr. Griffith.
Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, excellencies. It's a pleasure to be here today. So today I'll be talking to you about the future of fossil fuels and how technology is influencing that. It's a very big topic, and so I'll try and take you through a perspective on the industry from the point of view of a technological potential disruption on fossil fuel and how industry will be having to deal with this in the future. To set the context for the talk, the first slide shows you the evolution of the history of energy over time. And I think it's instructive to look at this diagram because we see that at one point in time, before the first industrial revolution, the world was largely based on the use of renewable energy, biomass. Over time, the sources of energy and the uses of energy became more sophisticated, and we progressed through an energy system that included or continued to include coal and then oil, natural gas, hydropower, nuclear energy, and more recently, the modern renewable energy technologies, which I'll talk about in the talk today. So what we're left with now approaching the year 2020 is the question of what will be the future of energy and how will technology impact the future of energy. The factors that are going to be major influencers, there's a policy set I won't get into today. Certainly if we start to see bans on internal combustion engines, we see renewable energy mandates, that will implicitly start to limit the amount of fossil-based energy resources we'll see. Likewise, if we put explicit carbon taxes or caps on the amount of carbon dioxide that can be emitted from combustion of fossil fuels, we'll see a reduction in the use of fossil fuel. I won't be addressing that. I'll be addressing the technological side and technology. We'll see increasingly, and I'm sure that Adnan Amin will talk about this from his perspective at IRENA, the use of solar energy, wind energy, the modern renewables, given what we'll see is the substantial reductions in price in the past several years in these technologies. The electric vehicle is very important, obviously, for the transportation sector, as well as autonomous vehicles and shared vehicles that are being enabled through technology. We'll also be considering then other areas of technology, such as three-dimensional printing, which could disrupt, for instance, supply chain. Imagine sending an electronic file and having that file be used to manufacture a good rather than having to ship products. That will definitely have an impact on the energy sector. So with this background, we start to consider what will be the major points of my talk today. And to try and bring focus to the discussion, I look toward the World Energy Council and their World Energy Issues Monitor, which they release each year. And the Council does a very nice job of looking at how the major issues in energy evolve over time. And so if we look at this chart, to make it a little bit simpler for you, I highlight the areas I'll be talking about. In the past 8 years, we've seen that renewable energy has had a major transition from a technology or a technological area that was somewhat uncertain with very much an unknown impact on the energy sector to one with certain impact on energy and also much greater certainty on that impact. We'll also be looking at electric storage, electricity storage, batteries. Several years ago, 8 years ago, it was again somewhat unknown as the impact of this technology. Now we're seeing the impact become certainly clear in the eyes of the government and industry stakeholders that contribute to the survey, but also somewhat uncertain. What will electric vehicles look like? What will grid-scale storage look like? Digitalization, I'll define further. That has become one of the very key areas in technology. We've seen the growth in data availability, in hardware sophistication, as well as algorithms that can process the data. And so digital technologies will be a key part of my talk today. And then finally, innovation in transport, the electric shared autonomous vehicle will be part of the discussion. So I will keep my focus on these areas and try and stay aligned with what the Energy Council has seen as major areas for us to consider for the future. Let's start with renewables. I don't want to go too much into this because I know it's another topic of the discussion. I'll just say that the decline in costs from innovations in renewable energy have been substantial in the past 8 years. Renewable energy, solar photovoltaics, utility scale, 70% cost reductions. And as you can see, moving into the next couple decades, substantial, probably at least 50% cost reductions continuing, enabling this technology to be a major part of the energy future. Battery electricity storage, electrochemical storage, again, 80% cost reductions roughly in lithium-ion batteries in the past 8 years, with further price reductions foreseen, all enabling a future where we'll have, for certain, electricity in the renewable form and storage being a greater part of our energy system, as well as the increasing competitiveness of renewable energy in its own right in different geographies and increasing in new geographies over time. The chart I show you here is for Australia, very good, obviously, solar resources, where we see that solar PV and wind technologies are already more competitive than gas-fired or coal-fired generation already. Of course, these technologies, they are intermittent. They're not available all the time, and so we have to consider on a levelized basis the inclusion of storage if we're trying to compare directly to your, quote, baseload energies, which are coming from coal and gas. And so there may be a little ways to go, but we see from the cost curves, it's likely that these technologies are going to have a major part of the energy system in the future. So what is the impact, given my topic of my talk today, that I foresee in the fossil energy space, given these technologies and how they've evolved? I would say first, coal, which is the least clean of the fossil fuels, is most certainly going to be impacted. Even as energy demand grows, the demand for coal will at best stay constant. In the worst case, if we're able to move towards sustainable development goals and really aggressively attack the issue of climate change mitigation, the use of coal will plummet dramatically. If you look at this strictly on a cost basis, McKinsey's done this, Bloomberg New Energy Finance has done this, the demand for coal should fall precipitously because we know in its own right, coal is becoming a less cost competitive technology relative to renewables. And so this is the first conclusion around technology. Stepping into an area that probably will be less discussed in this session, digitalization, it's a very broad space. And so with digitalization, I see it as the convergence of the physical and digital worlds to allow us to do entirely new things in situational awareness, in covering invisible insights, and then predicting the future. The technologies, Internet of Things, so we have billions and billions of devices and billions more to come, which are now sensing the world around us, and that will continue in the future. With the data produced, we're going to see the ability to analyze in big data analytics and gain sense from these data that have been generated. Artificial intelligence is an area where we try to give machines, something I just mentioned, situational awareness, foresight, the ability to optimize in a better way, and really become more human-like in the way in which they operate, and that's probably one of the most important areas for the future. Robots and drones, so I think any job that is considered dull, dirty, or dangerous should not have a human involved, and so these are the embodiment of intelligent systems. It's the hardware which can do things for us. Virtual and augmented reality, virtual reality, completely immersive in an environment, experiencing the world around you, completely immersed. Augmented reality, giving you better situational awareness. You're still in the world that we live in, but seeing things in a different way, given technology support. The blockchain, distributed ledgers, which is secure, which cut out intermediation for security, and then 3D printing, which is, as I said previously, the generation of electronic files which can produce new products. So these, and then of course manufacture those in a layer by layer additive way. These are all areas of digitalization, which I believe will be at the core of the future of energy and really fundamental to the talk today. If we look at some of the just very high level areas in which we're going to see the digitalization have an impact, renewables, as I said, they are intermittent, and so without some technological way to balance them, they'll be difficult to get to very high share. Digitalization is going to support this, and so Bloomberg New Energy Finance, electricity sector, the ability to balance a uncertain demand with an uncertain supply will be enabled by digitalization, allowing us to reach high shares of both distributed and centralized renewable energy. Transportation sector, the number of passenger miles traveled will continue to increase toward an electric, shared, autonomous future, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. And not to forget the fossil energy space, I will mention in the talk today that fossil energy will continue to be relevant in the future, and so digitalization is helping us find and discover new sources of fossil energy, as well as extract and produce fossil energy much more cost effectively. And so you can see digitalization in this entire realm is extraordinarily important for where we're moving technologically in the future. Let's go to the vehicles for a moment. I think electric vehicles is an area that's going to be quite important for the oil and gas sector. I talked about coal, what about oil in particular? In the electric vehicle space, if you look at what BP, which is probably one of the less optimistic companies as far as electrification of vehicles is projecting, 15% by 2040 of the total vehicle fleet, passenger vehicle fleet, can be from electric vehicles. That's the dark blue bar on the left-hand side. More importantly, though, because we see that the coupling, or the more than coupling, bringing autonomy and sharing into electric vehicle space could allow the total number of miles or kilometers traveled by shared autonomous electric vehicles to ramp up very quickly. So it's not how many cars you have, it's how many cars are being operated. And the view is that when you have shared autonomous electric vehicles, they will predominate in what you see as far as cars on the road. As far as electrification itself, as I said previously, this is one of the more reserved, sort of low forecasts as far as where electrification will go. Bloomberg New Energy Finance would say about a third of the vehicle fleet by 2040 could be from electric vehicles. Here I think what's interesting is bringing in the autonomy and the sharing, which will certainly have a major, major impact on the use of fossil fuels in transportation. The right-hand side simply reinforcing post-2030, the growth in passenger miles traveled is projected by an oil and gas company to come almost exclusively from shared transportation, ride-hailing and ride-sharing. So I think this is one very, very clear example of how technology is going to transition into the transportation sector and have a major impact. What impact will it have is a good question. I show the chart on the left because it's pretty much anyone's guess where oil demand is going to go. Every major oil and gas company in the world now has economists trying to figure out what the future is going to look like. They have multiple scenarios. OPEC is doing this, IEA is doing this, and they're all coming up with a fairly diverse set of views. By 2040, will we have 80 million barrels per day of oil demanded, or will we have 120? And it really depends on how the world unfolds politically, technologically, in economics. And so if you look at McKinsey, they believe this peak oil discussion is going to, at least for the light duty transportation vehicles, come to a conclusion in the mid-2020s. The rest of the oil industry will see a peak sometime later, maybe a decade later, because of other uses for oil. The bottom line is there eventually, someday, sometime will be a peak, and then there'll be slowly over time a diminishing of the use of oil. We just don't know when. And so for an oil and gas company, you have to realize that there is an uncertain future. And so how are you going to deal with this? What you see is, given the scenarios, if you take IEA, for example, again, reflecting what I just said, huge diversity in what the outcome for oil could be, both in price and demand. You just don't know. And if you bet in the wrong way and you bet in with just one approach, you're going to lose. And so you need to be very strategic. And so I give 3 different options for where you can go as an oil and gas company. This is quite important for the UE. You can reduce your exploration production costs and be the low-cost producer. There will always be oil demand. I can't foresee a day where we're not seeing the 60 million barrel per day by the middle of this century type of demand. I've never seen a forecast lower than that. So if you're the lowest cost producer, you'll have a market. We just don't know what the price will be. You can start to produce petrochemicals from oil. You don't have to always think about refining and going to transportation. And so I'll talk a bit about that. You can become an energy company, not an oil and gas company, move into new sources of energy, and become sort of more holistic in your view of the world of energy, and I'll talk about that. The last one I won't mention is all. You could just sell your assets and assume that the game is over and there is no more future for the hydrocarbon sector, which I don't think is wise and I wouldn't recommend. So I will cover the first 3 strategically. As far as reducing cost, digitalization, coming back to this, there's one area where I think technology is going to allow oil and gas producers to have a major impact on their production costs is digitalization. There is nowhere in the oil and gas value chain, supply chain, where digital technologies, which I previously discussed, won't have an impact. This is a very complicated set of, I think, pictures because it displays a number of technologies throughout the value chain. I'll highlight just a few areas. So big data in the subsurface, when you're going through exploration, production, seismic analysis, drilling, you get terabytes and petabytes of data. Analyzing these in order to be more intelligent in the way in which you discover oil and gas resources is happening. It's happened in the past. It will continue to happen. and make the discovery of new deposits of oil and gas more economical. We look at in the field, once you've begun to produce, using predictive maintenance. So we don't want to have to maintain things proactively. It's expensive. Reactively is very expensive because things break. They're down for a while. You want to predict when things will break and fix them in advance. And so with artificial intelligence, the ability to train systems to identify potential issues with equipment and machinery, we can now do that. This is one of the most invested in areas, I'd say, of artificial intelligence digitalization currently happening in the oil and gas sector. I mentioned blockchain. So if you're working with a supply chain and you want to have a secure transaction amongst parties without an intermediary to ensure the security, the blockchain, this distributed ledger technology is being looked at by many companies. ADNOC themselves here in Abu Dhabi is now working with blockchain to see if they can use it in their supply chain. Three-dimensional printing. If you're going to worry about parts breaking, you'd rather not carry expensive inventories. So what if you could have a part produced on demand, on site, when something breaks and have it work robustly without failure? That's the optionality, that's the future, I think, for three-dimensional printing. Giving workers more safety, so if you're wearing, you've probably seen Google Glasses, any type of technology gives you better situational awareness to know what you're doing, when you're working, be safer, be more effective. That's how workers, I think, will become more productive. And then finally, anywhere where we don't really want people involved, dull, dirty, dangerous jobs, you'd like drones and robotics for inspection. That said, the Shell Chief Technology Officer, just a couple weeks ago in The Economist, is just, as I was alluding to what I said in the upstream, at one time a geologist would have to spend weeks looking at data to try and understand where new deposits of oil and gas would be, looking at faults, these types of things. Now, in a few hours with software, this costs about $20. And so, as you can see, there is this move toward digitalization, oil and gas, just in this example upstream, but throughout the entire sector to have major disruption. And so maybe someday, long in the future, the Ubers and the Googles and the Facebooks will start to be the players in this sector more so than the Shells per se. I would say here, as we go, even with low-cost producers, there's a geopolitical dimension to this. The major markets will not be the markets they used to be. If we look toward 2040, India, China, Southeast Asia, these types of areas are going to be where you're going to compete, even as a low-cost producer, for selling your hydrocarbon resources, particularly oil. And so this country, countries in the GCC are going to have to continue to build strong relations, utilize technology, but also utilize geopolitical influence to have an effective future, an efficient future for themselves. The technological area that I've not touched on yet, but I will touch on now, moving into another area of potential opportunity, is the downstream. You've probably seen the headlines. ADNOC invests $45 billion over 5 years to get into downstream. It makes sense how to monetize the oil resources. IEA and just about every other forecaster is predicting that the major source of growth for the industry will be in downstream. And so several million barrels a day additionally will be used for petrochemicals in the coming years. And so it makes strategic sense for companies to move in this direction over time. And it's a trend that's being captured now and it'll be captured in the future. Getting into new energy technologies. Since the beginning of the century, we saw oil and gas companies thinking about this. Now toward 2020, we're seeing it's happening for real, and the likes of Shell are getting into it very strongly, as you see in the yellow bar. I think this move into new energy technologies to prepare for a future with less oil and gas involved is going to be something that's going to be amongst all the companies here. And you see now more than 10 new deals per year across the sector, and going to new energy is going to proliferate as a trend. Shell itself, their head of new energies, has said they're spending $2 billion per year to get into new energy, and they think it's not because of what's been going on the past 20 years, it's what the future holds. And so they will continue to move in this direction. And by 2030, Shell thinks it's going to be the world's biggest electricity company. So it won't be oil and gas anymore, it'll be producing electricity. In new markets, in established markets, they'll be finding a new business opportunity. And so their investments currently today already reflect that. I think it's quite interesting. So to conclude, coming back to the original point in this quick overview of where technology is taking the future of fossil, I'd say renewables in the power sector is advancing, it's going to happen. Solar and wind is going to be a major part of the future energy sector. Energy storage is going to continue to play a role, and electrification, of course, will support that, and that will come at the expense of coal, as I'll say shortly. Digitalization in power is going to enable very high shares of renewables to be part of our energy system, and that's something I think where we're going to see opportunities in forecasting, more robust forecasts to deal with intermittency, and then demand response to try to bring, as I said previously, intermittent supply with intermittent demand into balance. Digitalization, transportation, electrification, sharing, autonomy of vehicles is going to be the key discussion point, I think, for the next few decades. It won't go without quite a bit of discussion, and certainly in this country, given the key need for oil in the economy. And then digitalization of the oil and gas sector actually will enable oil and gas to be more cost effective in the future. So it's sort of two faces to where digitalization can impact the energy sector. Finally, in fossil fuels, in the power sector, I'd say coal is going to decline, natural gas less so because it is cleaner and there are other uses for it. Transportation is more uncertain. Light-duty vehicles, I think, will almost entirely be electrified at some point. Long-haul, larger vehicles, airlines, for instance, shipping, maybe less so given the challenges of batteries for those different forms of transportation. Industry, petrochemicals is going to increase substantially, as they've seen. And finally, in the concluding point, hydrocarbon producing countries such as the UAE are going to strategically evolve along with international oil companies, looking at geopolitics if they're going to try and be low-cost producers selling to new markets, or moving into petrochemicals and new energy technologies in the future, potentially renewables. So with that, thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to talk with you in your question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Adnan Amin. He is the Director General of International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA. His talk today is the perspectives of development in the field of renewable energy. Please help me welcome Mr. Amin.
Assalamu alaikum, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great pleasure for me to be able to join this distinguished panel this morning, but I'd like to start right at the beginning by thanking His Excellency, the Director General of the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, His Excellency Professor Jamal Sanad Al-Suwaidi, for convening these discussions on the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. I'm approaching the end of my tenure as the first Director General of IRENA after 8 years. I've had the great privilege of being participant in discussions at the Emirates Center over these many years. Thank you very much, Professor Suwaidi. And I found it a very inspiring and important forum through which we can really begin to develop a sense of how the future will look and advise policymakers on decision making. But in these last 8 years, I've come to the conclusion that we are currently in the midst of a global energy transformation that presents one of the biggest opportunities of this century for moving our world onto a sustainable growth path in the context of climate change. Driven by the unprecedented growth of renewables, this transformation is rapidly picking up speed. In 2017 alone, 168 gigawatts of additional renewable energy power capacity was installed globally, representing 70% of all new capacity and more than double that of fossil fuels. And this is a continuation of a trend that has been happening over the last 8 years. So in the power sector, as Steve was saying, the domination of renewables is very, very evident. But this has mainly been due to the continuous cost reductions and a strengthening business case for renewable power generation, and renewables have become a mainstream energy source to meet growing demand and power sustainable growth. The cost of electricity from solar PV fell by almost 75% in the years between 2009 and 2018, and the cost of onshore wind electricity has dropped by almost 22% during the same period. IRENA analysis estimates that by next year, renewables will be the cheapest option for power generation in most parts of the world, especially as dynamic innovation processes begin to provide new solutions, and Steve touched on many of the technology solutions that we're seeing emerging. As a result, countries around the world are starting to grasp the full potential of renewable energy, and the impact is now becoming evident worldwide. But we also need to understand that this fast-moving energy transition is much more than just a shift from one energy source to another. Rather, it entails profound changes with implications for economic, social, and political systems. And I want to underline here that this includes geopolitics. And I think it's very appropriate that in the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies, we discuss the geopolitical implications of the energy transition we're seeing. In the past, I often attended many discussions at international conferences that discussed energy security, but these remain firmly centered on the geopolitics of oil and gas. It was about pipelines, security of supply, prices, and the game-changing element of renewable energy development was never factored into these discussions. So I thought, as the world of energy begins to change, this is a major gap. So in response, I took the initiative to establish a global commission to develop a multidisciplinary independent analysis of the geopolitical implications of the energy transformation which is being driven by renewables. The commission was composed of a diverse group of thought leaders from different regions. It encompassed former ministers of energy, environment, and foreign affairs, leaders from international organizations, as well as from fossil fuel companies. The support of the government of the United Arab Emirates, along with that of Norway and Germany, were critical to the success of this commission in the year that it undertook its work. The report that came out of this process highlights that the energy transformation will change the relative positions of states, resulting in the emergence of new energy leaders, more diverse energy actors, changed trade relationships, and the creation of new alliances. While overall the potential benefits of the transition clearly outweigh the risks, governments and industry need to reconsider their vision and positioning for this new and rapidly changing world. Under such circumstances, it is critical for fossil fuel exporters to reinvent their economies and to be less reliant on fossil fuels in the future. And I'm really inspired by the example of the UAE in this regard over the years that have been here. And I remember vividly a speech by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed a few years ago at the World Government Summit, when he said, "How should we feel the day we export our last barrel of oil?" And the vision that he outlined of how Abu Dhabi and the UAE are diversifying their economy was really a lesson for many fossil fuel exporters for the future. So in this regard, we see positive developments in oil and gas producing countries in the Gulf region in general. By harnessing their renewable energy potential, these countries today have a huge opportunity to reverse the social, economic, and political risks posed by their oil dependence while creating a more sustainable economic future for their people. IRENA's recent report on regional market analysis for the GCC for 2019, launched 2 months ago, analyzes the progress that has been made in the establishment of enabling policy, regulatory, and investment frameworks in the Gulf countries, and offers an outlook for renewables deployment in the region. The report highlights the forward-looking vision and leadership of the UAE, which has been a catalyst for transition in this region. The country has considerable renewable energy potential, namely solar, as it lies in the so-called global sun belt, with some of the highest solar irradiances in the world, and it is the fastest growing solar market in the region. In 2017, UAE launched its Energy Strategy 2050, under which it aims to generate 44% of its power from clean energy by 2050, cut carbon emissions by 70%, and improve energy efficiency by 40%. When I go to conferences in Europe, and European countries consider themselves very advanced in meeting climate goals, when you talk about the goals and the strategy of the UAE, which is an oil-producing country, most people are completely unaware and taken by surprise, but they need to understand how this change is happening. With such ambitious plans, the UAE currently hosts close to 79% of installed solar PV capacity in the Gulf and has managed to attract some of the lowest costs for solar PV projects without offering subsidies. A remarkable milestone. Well-designed auction schemes have contributed significantly to the cost reduction for renewables in the UAE. This is particularly true for solar PV and concentrated solar power technologies, which have set record low prices over the last 3 years. In late 2018, a record low price of $2.4 a kilowatt hour was awarded for the 250 megawatt solar PV project for phase 4 of the Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum solar park in Dubai. The 700 megawatt CSP concentrated solar for the phase 4 of the park achieved a world record low price of $7.3 a kilowatt hour with storage. Just across the border in January, Abu Dhabi's own Masdar won the contract for the 400 megawatt wind farm in Saudi Arabia for a record low price of $2.13 a kilowatt hour. These are the kind of developments that Steve also mentioned in terms of cost reductions that we are seeing, which are going to dramatically change the future of energy. And such cost declines have made renewables the cheapest source of electricity for new projects in the UAE, but also in the entire Gulf region. In the near term, we forecast that the region will see major acceleration in renewables deployment, led by the UAE, Oman, and Kuwait. A total of nearly 7 gigawatts of new power generation capacity from renewables is planned to come online by the early 2020s in the next couple of years, and 3.14 gigawatts of this capacity is planned for the UAE alone. Additionally, there is a growing momentum to harness the region's wind energy potential, particularly in Kuwait, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. Renewables will also deliver social, economic, and environmental objectives. IRENA's analysis, undertaken on behalf of the G20, shows that by harnessing renewable resources, the Gulf countries will add 220,000 new jobs through 2030, 45% of which will be in the UAE. As renewables markets mature, the share of jobs in local manufacturing segments will also increase, along with the creation of local value chains. Larger markets such as Saudi Arabia and the UAE in particular could create an enabling environment through policies and dedicated efforts. Such targeted measures would include policies to support enhanced capacities along the supply chain and additional education and training policies to ensure a well-trained and capable workforce to support this transition. The environmental benefits of renewables are a principal driver for their adoption. IRENA's analysis shows that renewable energy and energy efficiency combined can deliver 90% of the energy-related emission reductions needed to realize the climate objectives of the Paris Agreement. The Gulf countries, by achieving their renewable energy targets, would also reduce water withdrawal for power production and associated fuel extraction by 11.5 trillion liters in 2030. This is particularly important given the water-stressed nature of the region. As we face the immense challenges posed by climate change, we need to mobilize collective global action to meet the objectives of the Paris Agreement. And the UAE is positioning itself at the center of the global climate discussions this year by hosting the preparatory meeting of the 2019 UN Climate Summit. It will gather the 9 coalitions established as part of the preparation of the summit in a stock-taking meeting in Abu Dhabi in June to identify the actions, partnerships that can be presented at the summit. The Geopolitics Commission's report also highlights the important role of innovation, which will have an increasing impact on the geopolitical standing of countries. Since renewables are available in almost all countries, efforts to secure resources will become a secondary question to how to make use of them. This means that there will be a move from a competition for resources, natural resources, to a race for innovation. Digitalization, big data, blockchain technologies, and the application of artificial intelligence in the energy sector will further catalyze these developments. And the diagram that Steve showed with the flow of technological innovations will be central to how the future of energy will evolve.
Mr. Amin, you have 1 minute to close.
So having said all of that, I wanted to say a few personal remarks, which is that the experience of living in the UAE over the last 8 years has been a remarkable experience. I came here from New York, I didn't know the UAE, and working in the field of sustainability and energy, seeing the strategic thinking about the energy transformation that characterizes how energy policy in the UAE is shaping up provides a very positive example for the future and positions the country to be able to take advantage of its wealth in a much more sustainable manner in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last but not least, we have our third speaker, Dr. Ahmed Al-Durra. He is an associate professor in electrical and computer engineering at the Khalifa University of Science and Technology. And his talk title is The Future of Electricity in the World of Energy Mix. Welcome, Dr. Ahmed.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. في البداية ألقي التحية لأصحاب السعادة، السادة الحضور، سيدات السادة، وأقدم الشكر للدكتور جمال سند السويدي وجميع العاملين أيضا في مركز الإمارات للدراسات البحوث الاستراتيجية على التنظيم الرائع صراحة لهذا المؤتمر. Let me do my presentation in English. I'll conduct my presentation in English, and I'm sorry, although I am very proud of my language, definitely, and this is one of the core objectives of this forum, but because of the terminologies, sometimes it might be easier to do it through the English. I also would like to thank very much the organizers for the sequence of topics they picked, which shows how meticulous they were. We started with the classic power, which is a fossil fuel, and then we moved to renewable energy, and then we moved to the electricity, which is the media or the type of energy that we usually deliver the power all the way from the generators or the source to the end users or the customers. So I'll go over the outline of my presentation quickly. I'll go over the conventional power grid so that we are all on the same page. We know what's going on and what is there at the moment, or what is the classic power grid we have now. And I'll pass through the electricity supply and demand, which is a very important topic, to see the importance of using the renewable energy and integration of the renewable energy. And at the end, I will focus on the microgrid and smart grid technologies, and I will conclude with that. So what is the conventional power grid? We heard about renewable energy, and I just want to make sure that all of us here are on the same page and know how is the power delivered from the generation all the way to the distribution. So we have generating stations, which are mostly until recently are fossil fuel and hydro energy and nuclear energy. And then we have the transmission lines, which take the power at a level of hundreds of kilovolts all the way to the distribution area. And then we'll have the sub-transmission customers, the industry mainly, and the primary customers, and the secondary customers, which is the local or the regular consumers. And then we go to the level of a voltage of 120 to 240, which we all see around us. So this is the paradigm we have now, or in most of the areas around the world. In this paradigm, or in this structure, we have the power flowing always in a unidirectional way. So it goes from the power generation transmission line all the way to the distribution, and there's no way that any power can go on the other direction back. To have the equation balance, whatever power we generate, we should consume. Okay, so if you produce more than what you need, then you're wasting energy. If you're producing less than what you need, then you create an imbalance and possibly instability. Right? So we need somehow to deal with any possible mismatching that might happen. And for that, let me introduce an example of where this scenario could be very complicated. Unfortunately, I brought my pointer with me, but it doesn't work with these screens. If you can look at the curved, the middle line, the curve, the blue curve, you will see the demand from the customers. This is from Kyushu area in Japan. And in Kyushu, they have different source of energy. They have the solar PV, they have the hydro, thermal, and the nuclear also. So as you can see, the demand change through the day. So this is within one day, and you can see that the demand reach the peak in the morning when people go to the work, and then it peaks again when people comes back from work at around 7 to 8 p.m. So PV solar provide us with the maximum energy during the middle of the day. And what we can do here, because we have a more of an advanced network in Kyushu, they can store the excess power they generate in a pumped hydro, and then they can utilize the excess power, as you can see, during the peak time. They can use it to lessen the dependency on the fossil fuel energy, which is usually more expensive. So in this case, you try to fill the gap between the fossil fuel, between the renewable and the other types of energy, and utilizing the energy storage. So the idea here is that we would like to reverse the paradigm. We would like the renewable energy, in fact, to supply us with the most of the energy we need, and then we use this thermal generation to fill the gap between the renewable energy generated and the demanded energy from the end customer or the consumers. For that, we need store, and storage devices or storage systems is a very huge area these days. And the main issue is the capacity and the cost. And the other thing that we need to deal with is the demand response, as Steve mentioned. So we need to know, or we need to in an intelligent way, deal with the demand and try to shift it if possible. Try to shave the curve of the demand so that it fits to the best possible way the generated power. So for that, we need to we need to create some incentives. We need to use electric vehicles, and this is a vast area, as also again Steve mentioned, and definitely smart grid. I'll focus on smart grid in this speech, but before I go on, I know that Adnan already mentioned a lot or pointed out a lot of these statistics about renewable energy. What I want to highlight here is that solar energy and wind energy is the most increasing, I would say, rapidly increasing energy compared to the others. And if you compare what the end of the 2016 renewable energy compared to the end of 2017 renewable energy contribution to the electrical system, you will see that we have increased by 2%, and most of that is coming from wind and PV. Just to give you a glimpse of what we have, although again Adnan I think mentioned that, so quickly we have Shams 1 in Abu-Dhabi here, which is the largest renewable energy project operating in the Middle East with 100 megawatt capacity. We have the big PV power plant development in Suwayhan with the 1.2 gigawatt. And we also have in Dubai long-term vision to have a 5 gigawatt solar PV system capacity by 2030. What we can see here is that we have an increase in the power demand. We have complexity, we're expecting more complexity even in the power grid. For different reasons. Different type of industrial are emerging. Power electronics is causing a lot of destruction to the harmonics of the system and so on. Generation and the capacity limitation, we have it as an issue, and we'd like to have a more reliable, self-regulating and high efficient system or a network. And at the end, and it's the most important point, we need to integrate our renewable energy to the grid. Therefore, we need definitely a smarter grid. Whatever we have now does not satisfy our needs. So in the future, the power system will requires to have the following points, or at least the most important one, which is we need to have a dispatchable and non-dispatchable energy sources. By that we mean we need to have sources that we can control, like the fossil fuel. We cannot get rid of the fossil fuel, at least at the moment, or at least in the next decade or two. And at the same time, we need non-dispatchable energy, which is the renewable energy that we cannot control, like PV and wind energy. At the end, wind energy is an energy that you cannot control it. It depends on the wind speed and density. Plus the PV, again, it depends on the solar irradiance. At the same time, we will need to also start to utilize the direct current, not only AC. Now, almost the majority of the network is AC network. Definitely we'll need to utilize the DC, and that will save a lot of cost for us, especially that most of the renewable energy systems are based on DC current. Low power generation, definitely, and bidirectional power flow. Storage is very important, and at the end, microgrid and smart grid concept needs to be utilized. So if we look at the last point, in fact, it encompasses many of the previous points here. So let me introduce or give a glimpse here about the microgrid. What is a microgrid? A microgrid is basically a small-scale power grid that can operate independently. So you have different types of distributed generation, and they have it's connected through an independent network, through consumers network, and it can also be connected to the grid. So it should be dynamic in a way that it can be connected to the grid, and it can work in an islanding mode. So you can completely disconnect from the grid, and it can work in an islanding mode without any destruction to the end users. And for that, we will usually, there are a lot of studies on that. Mainly, the main issue here is that your grid should not be affected if you disconnect. And that's not an easy task, because you can think about it, out of the sudden you disconnect a huge amount of load from your system. And at the same time, for your microgrid itself, it should be capable of providing the needed power with the power quality that meets the standard, and at the same time does not affect or harm the equipment of the end user. Another concept that emerged recently also is called the virtual power plant. Virtual power plants are basically something similar to the microgrid. However, they are different in a way that they are something in between, in fact, between the regular power supplies or power stations and the microgrid, in a sense that they have to supply the energy once they are committed, and at the same time they cannot be disconnected from the grid. And they cannot work in an islanding mode. So it is somewhat in between microgrid and regular power plants. The third important concept here is the smart grid. And the smart grid is basically a vision that can capture a range of advanced in the information, communication, control, and most importantly, energy technologies. So it is a vast or a huge concept here that you can that encompasses sensors, encompasses technologies that deals with communication, control, and energy. There is another concept emerged recently called the energy internet also, which is basically a mimic of the internet. At the end of the internet is a way to share information. And the concept here is that can we reach to a point where we can share energy? Okay. We can in fact merge the two concepts, smart grid and microgrid, together if we can utilize the intelligence that we have in these devices used in the smart grid in a microgrid structure. So let me give you an example of a smart grid that we might in some of the areas you might see, especially in Denmark and Canada. A smart grid that you can see nowadays is basically centralized. So there is usually a main central controller that deals with all the sub-controllers in different areas. And this is causing an issue because it limits your flexibility, it causes some issues to the communication system. And therefore, the future smart grid should be more dependent, so we should have more of a distributed generation system that deals independently around certain areas, and these communicate in a smart way to reach to an optimal solution in between them and fixing and providing the needed energy, and also in dealing with possible abrupting in the operation. General issues on the smart grid setup is the coordination between this distributed generation, and at the same time the problem of having centralized controller, and that could again cause some issue with the communication resources. And therefore we need to come up with an autonomous controllers on each one of these distributed generators, generating areas or regions. And then another issue is the need for a diverse power supply to incorporate with the smart grid. And this is where I said microgrid and smart grid can work together. And finally, the self-healing topic or concept here, which is one of the advantages of having the smart grid. The smart grid also in the future should have the ability to deal with it can predict, analyze data and predict some issues, problems in the network, and deal with that automatically. What are the non-technical challenges here? Non-technical challenges started with the data ownership and privacy. Who should own the information at the end? And grid security, this is definitely one of the major issues that we need to deal with in the future, especially that when dealing with smart grid, you're gathering a lot of personal information, industrial information, and so on. Control of the distributed resources will be a problem also, and who owns and who have the right to control these. The possibility of coming up with private sectors playing roles in these grids, and the need of certain standard. So in fact, yesterday was on DIWA R&D Center, and I was shocked to know that until now we don't have standards for microgrids in the UAE. This is something that we should definitely deal with in the coming years. And as I said at the end here, there is no simple answer to this. If you look around through the different countries that have started to utilize smart grid and microgrid, even slightly, they still don't have a unified standards for them. Let me also here introduce some of the enablers that will allow us to deal with smart grid in the future. The advanced smart metering, and this is becoming a device that is much cheaper if you'll compare it to what it has to be 5 years ago. An advanced meter device can allow you to have a communication signal between the end user and the utility. And it can also be programmed in a way that it can choose the proper decision of when to turn on, turn off devices. I will go over some of these. Let me go over the advanced electricity pricing, which also something that we still don't have here, but it's available in the US and in Canada and some of the countries in Europe. Prices of electricity varies every 10 minutes even. Okay, so with that, knowing this and predicting the possible change in the price, you can use this information to intelligently store the energy or utilize it if you have a storage device, for example. And this is one of the major contribution that we expect to see from the electric vehicles. Electric vehicles, they will be parking your car. If you're using an electric vehicle, you put it in a parking lot and you go for work, and maybe during the peak time you don't need to use it, so you can utilize that and sell the energy or the energy stored in the battery, and during the off-peak you can buy the energy back at a lower price, so it's a win-win situation between you and the utility. The nowcasting and forecasting capabilities that we're getting nowadays because of the huge improvement in the data analytic devices will play a great role also in the smart grid concept. Smart inverters also can help us a lot in dealing with the grid monitoring and voltage frequency event right through, so it will improve the stability of the system. And finally here, the distributed the energy storage systems, and this is by itself a huge area to deal with, but it's going to be a very vital, it will play a very important role in this shifting to the new structure. Definitely, DEWA also started to deal with smart grid integration plan. I've realized that, as I said, in my visit yesterday. And there is a tendency of also of building smart grid station. So at the end, the future power grid will look completely different than the way we look at it these days. So you can compare the change that happened to the communication during the last 20 years. Same thing will happen, but this time to the power grid and the electrical distribution system in the next decade or two. By that, I would like to thank you for your patience, and we'll have a discussion at the end.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. So now we get into the discussion period. Please, when you ask a question, state your name, where you're from, and keep your questions as brief as to the point as possible. I'll start with a few questions until we get the mics around. So if we can get the mic somewhere here, so I'll start with a question directed to Mr. Amin. You mentioned that there's about 128 gigawatt of electricity or power generation from renewable, right? Is that correct? 168 gigawatts. 168 gigawatt in 1 year. So where is this growth is mainly happening? And most importantly, how are we making it happen?
It's a very interesting phenomenon. What we've seen is that capacity addition has been increasing year on year at a quite significant rate. So I think the tipping point on the economics of renewables has already arrived. In the initial years, much of the new capacity addition was in most advanced economies. So countries like Germany, the US, in Europe. And what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years is that the majority of new capacity addition is now coming from emerging economies and developing countries. So more than 50% is coming there because energy demand in developed countries is not growing. What's happening in developed countries is that there is replacement of power generation from conventional sources by renewables. It's quite complex, it's expensive. Developing countries, fast-growing economies and populations, rising energy demand means that much of the new capacity addition is happening there. And you know, if you look at some of the emerging markets, China, for example, in 1 year, added 53 gigawatts of solar PV capacity in 2016. India has targets of almost 200 gigawatts of renewable power by 2025. The interesting thing is that this has started to happen in Latin America, Asia, and Africa also. And we're seeing, Morocco has moved from 98% energy import dependence to a target of 52% renewables by 2030. And it's completely feasible. I've been there and seen the projects. Last year, Egypt added 600 megawatts of renewable power, which is at the beginning of their growth. So we're going to see this increase, and it's going to be increasingly in developing and emerging economies.
So we have a question right here. Microphone, Shabab.
Well, I'm Nathan Toronto from the National Defense College. My question is for Dr. Ahmed. About the physical limitations of power grids. So my understanding is that there's only you can only make the grid so big because of the energy loss from sending electricity over wires, right? So my question is, what is the possibility of taking wires out, of using microwave technology or satellites to transfer power over longer distances to increase the efficiency?
Thank you for the question. Interesting question. In fact, this is one of the major advantages of using microgrid. So if you'll be using a microgrid, this will reduce the capacity required from the cables. In fact, you don't providing a certain rate of energy will in parallel you will linked to that, or in proportional, you need to increase the cable sizing, which makes clear sense here. But if you will have a microgrid on the other side that can come and provide this a percentage of this energy, and another microgrid that can also contribute, and also possibly the virtual power plant concept, as I said, that can also work as another source of power, this will lessen the requirement on the major cable that comes from one major substation or one major generator. With respect to the energy through satellite, this is something maybe very ambitious. So I have never thought about it personally.
Okay, thank you, Ahmed. Yes, go ahead.
Just quickly, I think one of the most interesting innovations we're seeing is ultra-high voltage DC transmission. And if you look at China, much of the power generation from renewables in China is in the far west of the country, and the load centers are the big cities in the east, and there are several thousand kilometers separating them. They have implemented a very ambitious project of ultra-high voltage transmission lines, which are minimizing electricity loss. And I think that is, as the cost of that begins to come down with scale, that is going to be a major addition to enable a more efficient system in the future.
My next question is to Steve. You've talked about the decentralization of power in your second slide, I would think, and its impact. And Dr. Ahmed also talks about microgrid, which is almost similar to centralization of power generation. But in your slide, it was highly ranked higher in the middle of your graph, where it says the technology is not viable yet. So how would that, I would like you and Dr. Ahmed to answer the question. How do you see that happening in the coming future?
Well, I think the question lends toward whether or not decentralized energy is going to be something that's going to take hold in the future. I think, right now, decentralization of particularly renewable energy is a trend that we're going to see going on for many decades. And I don't know if it was the second or which slide it was, but I talked about when you have potentially with microgrids, off-grids, developing countries such as Africa, where you're not going to have a centralized generation going into a well-established grid. India, I think Adnan would be well aware of these things. You need to have decentralization in electricity generation because you don't want to build out very expensive power infrastructure. If you can have coordination at the distributed side, say it's residential or it could be commercial, photovoltaics in particular, the cost effectiveness of that makes sense when your only alternative is to burn a hydrocarbon, which may be very expensive, for instance, a diesel generation, if it's in Africa or India, another one of these developing countries. The technological side with the digitalization, I think the distribution aspect of it is going to be continually improving, because when you have many different assets and they're operating independently, once you start to have an ability to coordinate them, I think Ahmed mentioned virtual power plants, then you can start to leverage them almost as a central generator. To whoever's consuming the electricity, they would seem as though they're coming from one source. But you need to do that through an intelligent system, which is aware of demand, is aware of what's available for supply, and then can dispatch these different distributed sources of energy when they're available and when they're needed. So I think there's the developing country side to it where it makes perfect sense. You don't want to try to build out large infrastructure when you can go to renewables, for instance, or distributed. The costs are coming down. It looks like it's going to be cost effective. And then the technological side, where you're able to coordinate multiple assets that are distributed and make them seamlessly look like they're one generator.
I personally believe that the distribution energy is inevitable. It's going to happen. Depends on when. The issue of having a centralized controller, or let's say authority, definitely I agree with Steve that it will provide it will be like the monitoring authority, or it will provide the stability whenever it's needed. But if we look at the other enablers, like the storage elements, by the way, this will play a great role in enabling, in fact, the distribution. Because once you have a huge bank of energy ready for you to use, this will take care of certain situations that might happen with microgrids. We cannot say that microgrids can sustain by itself, definitely. It has a lot of advantages, and again, you can have the same argument of, do we support blockchain or not? to some degree. Okay, should we have a centralized authority always that deals and control and make sure that the system is always stable?
Okay, thank you. Get a question from the audience. Right here.
خليل علي حيدر من الكويت.
مرحبا.
أنا أعتقد أن واحدة من المشاكل اللي تسبب القلق هو ازدياد الحاجة لاستهلاك البترول لإنتاج الماء في الدول الخليجية. هذه الفاتورة كل مالها قاعدة ترتفع. فما أدري تحولات الطاقة اللي الأساتذة الأفاضل تكلموا فيها إلى أي مدى ممكن تساهم في حل أو تقليص هالمشكلة هذه الموجودة. ويرتبط بهذا السؤال سؤال آخر، هو أن كما هو واضح هناك اتساع في تنوع السوق ودول في شفت باتجاه مثلا آسيا عن أوروبا. الصين إذا بدأت تعمل بفول كاباسيتي هذا راح يعني تنتج ضغوط على نماذج التصدير والاستهلاك وغيرها. فإلى أي حد في تنسيق بين الدول الخليجية لمجابهة والتعامل مع كل هذه التحولات والتغييرات القادمة؟ وشكرا.
شكرا. So I'll translate the questions to Steve. He probably, maybe heard the question. So the first one is, to what extent these different productions can support the water desalination? Because we have water, our water is desalinated here in the Gulf, and how would that support? The second question is, since Asia and Europe and I think mainly Asia, the question was that China is producing a lot of energy, and whether we in the GCC are ready to cooperate or at least coordinate with these different countries who are about to produce a mega generation of power, and how that coordination is happening. Maybe Amin can answer this question.
So I'll take the first one. I think with water production, it's a very good question, because in the UAE there's this nexus that we face with water and energy. A lot of the energy that we do use in the Emirate is going toward water production, particularly with desalination. So the more we go into the utilization of renewables for electricity, the more we need to make sure that our water production is decoupled for thermal generation. Today, in the Emirates, we have predominantly thermal-based generation. So we combust a fossil fuel to produce electricity. We use the waste heat to produce water thermally, sort of evaporation, distillation, then condensation. In essence. So now as we go toward the clean energy, we move toward renewables, and those can produce the electricity which can be used for things like reverse osmosis. The challenge, of course, is that renewable energy is intermittent. And so if you want to be able to utilize renewable energy for water, you not just need to have the electricity generation and a technology that can utilize electricity for water production, you have to have availability of the storage. With water, what is interesting is you can have various forms of storage. You can have water as a storage source of energy itself, produce water when electricity is available from clean energy, hold that, and then dispatch it when required. You can use electrochemical storage, which is fine, thermal storage. So water just gives you an extra dimension of possibilities when you're trying to utilize electricity and then store it. You're just storing it in the form of water produced. In the UAE, Masdar has done a few years ago a renewable power desalination program. They've shown the viability of using renewable energy, producing electricity, which then can be used to run a very efficient reverse osmosis or whatever membrane-driven, electricity-driven technology may be in order to cost-effectively produce clean water. And so now with this country, and I think throughout the rest of the Gulf, you'll see what we've learned from applying renewables to water generation, figuring out the optimal storage approach, more desalination happening through clean energy, in particular, solar electricity. It's very cost-effective. Adnan gave the numbers of how low the price is for utility-scale solar energy. There's no reason to go to a different energy source, produce electricity, produce the water, or store the energy and utilize that stored energy to produce water when you need it. So many options. I think that's a great opportunity for the region.
Desalination is definitely one of the major issues, and until now, unfortunately, there is no promising, I would say, or a magical answer for that. A lot of tendency is to utilize PV and wind at the peak timing and use it for the desalination. That could be one way, and instead of storing the energy, since we cannot store huge energy, but we can use this excess of energy to desalinate the water. That's one possibility. At once, I thought that maybe fuel cell can help, but it seems that fuel cell is a very expensive technology. خلايا الوقود الهيدروجينية إذا سامعين فيها. That's it for my side.
Okay. Mr. Amin, if you can answer the second part of the question about Asia and Europe producing much more energy, and if there is coordination within the Gulf region with those continents, I would say.
Okay, but just quickly on water. We use a lot of water for conventional power generation, and replacement by renewables actually releases a lot of that. And I spoke a little bit about the water savings that come from the switch to renewables. But coming back to this other issue, I think this is a critical issue which is of a geopolitical nature also, which is that the major markets for oil and gas from the Gulf region are Asian countries. That's where demand has been growing the highest, where these economies have been moving. And now you're seeing very ambitious renewable energy projects, countries moving towards larger degrees of energy independence, and an impact on oil and gas markets that will eventually move towards when we see peak demand coming, which some commentators think is going to be quite soon. I was looking at the numbers in China. China is the biggest market for electric vehicles. Everybody is talking about Tesla, but what is really happening is in China. And if you look at electric mobility, electric buses in China, just the electric buses in China have displaced the equivalent of 220,000 barrels diesel equivalent. That means per day. That means that the electrification mobility and the move towards renewable electricity in the major importing countries in Asia is going to be a very significant factor. I think what I'm seeing is there are some countries that have started this strategic engagement. I'm in China a lot, and I talk to a lot of decision makers in the region, and I'm seeing a lot of investment with very innovative technology companies in China, in artificial intelligence, in IT, but especially in renewable technology that is happening. So I think that there is a sense that the markets of the future are going to evolve, but that we have to position ourselves for that evolution through these strategic partnerships which have started already.
Thank you. We have room for two questions, one here, and then the next in the back.
Thanks. Chris Vitelis, I'm the Dean of the College of Business at Abu Dhabi University. I would like to hear a bit more about, related to geopolitics, about the subsidies to fossil fuels versus renewable energy. Because according to some data I was seeing, it doesn't look like subsidies to fossil fuels are going down. And I would like to have your views about what do you see as the interrelationship between the two and how this is going to affect, and if there are any estimates. Second is basically the idea of demand. You talked about the demand side, but related to what we are talking about tomorrow, about business and economics, I wonder what is the collaboration with economists and business folk on this front, because sometimes what behavioral economics can do, and sometimes some technological advancements, like, for example, adopting some models even borrowed from the airline industry, they can make a huge difference towards regulating and reducing demand, as opposed to all this, to the focus on technological aspects alone. So I would like a comment on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody would like to take this one?
Just on the subsidies question, it's absolutely true that we have far more subsidies. This is a paradox of the international energy system. Far more subsidies for fossil fuel industry, both consumer and producer subsidies, than you have subsidies for renewables. But the whole discussion you heard is that renewables are too expensive and have to be subsidized, and nobody talks about the subsidies. And we've begun to see that change. I mean, if you look here, I had a long-standing discussion with the Minister of Energy here, Suhail Mazrui, that you have to have true pricing for energy and water here, because it is heavily subsidized and it's a cost to the economy. And over time, they began to move in this direction. When I saw my utility bill, I changed my mind, but still it's too late for that. But that needs to happen as quickly as possible to create a level playing field, because we need to be technology neutral as we move forward, and we need to think about decarbonizing our economies. The G7, for example, I remember many successive leaders' meetings adopted this target to phase out subsidies of fossil fuels. It has not happened. But what has happened is that the price equation has changed. Renewables without subsidies in more and more markets are more competitive than conventional generation, and that whole economic picture is beginning to change. So I think that is quite a dramatic development that is being driven by market forces today.
Thank you. I think we're out of time, so if you have any questions, you can reach out to the speakers in the break. This time, I would like to thank our panelists here. Please help me thank them for this great discussion. Thank you.
كل الشكر والتقدير لجميع المشاركين في هذه الجلسة، والآن أترككم مع استراحة لمدة 10 دقائق، نعود بعدها لنبدأ أعمال الجلسة الثانية. نستكمل أعمال مؤتمرنا مع الجلسة الثانية تحت عنوان التغيير والأمن، ويترأسها سعادة مقصود كروز المدير التنفيذي لمركز هداية. تفضل سعادتك.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great honor and pleasure to be with you to host the second panel of this important dialogue, especially when it comes in its 24th occasion, and especially when we're talking about the importance of security and change, where we look into opportunities, but also in the challenges and how we can mitigate, prevent, and most importantly, how we can anticipate. This panel is a panel that is diverse with the expertise whom I had the honor to meet in previous capacities, but also to continue to learn from. I'm humbled to be with wonderful panelists who will be sharing their experiences and expertise, but also providing their insights on a variety of issues and topics. With our specific first panelist, I would like to introduce Dr. Nathan Toronto, the Associate Professor at the National Defense College and the United Arab Emirates, where he'll be sharing his views on the technology and the change of warfare, and how can all of this lead into the existing challenges, but also opportunities in this regard. Professor, the floor is all yours.
Good morning. I am very grateful to the Emirates Center and Dr. Jamal al-Suwaidi for this invitation. And I also have had the great pleasure of teaching at the UAE National Defense College for the last 6 years. And I should mention that the views that I present today are my own. They're not those of the UAE National Defense College or any agency of the UAE government. My task today is to discuss the relationship between technology and future warfare. My main point is that technology does not determine the way we fight. It does not determine the shape of warfare. And in order to see why that's the case, we will look back a little in the history of warfare to see how warfare has changed over time, in order to understand that it's both technology and human capital that influence the way warfare has changed in the past, and I believe the way warfare will change in the future. Now, I'm going to show you a video. It's a promotional video for a video game called Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. And in the popular imagination, we have this image of future warfare that is defined by technology. all the neat things, like exoskeletons and robots and drone swarms and shoulder-mounted high caliber weapons and jetpacks, all these different things. And this video captures that enamoration with technology really well.
What you're seeing is advanced warfare. Everybody ready? Hoorah! Politicians don't know how to solve problems, but I do.
Okay, so it has Kevin Spacey, and so it must be good, right? This is a little cartoonish. It's a caricature of warfare, but it also captures, like I said, how much we believe technology will influence the way we fight. But in order to really understand what the future of warfare entails, I think it's important to understand the experience of the soldier on the battlefield and see how his experience has changed over time. So we're going to go back in history just a little bit, okay? In about 230 years ago, in Enlightenment era warfare, it was organized based on small armies, and the men with these very inaccurate weapons called muskets would line up about 50 meters apart. So if you look to the back of the room, that's about 50 meters from where I'm standing. That's about how far apart these lines of men would stand, and they'd fire at each other. The principal objective of the soldier on the battlefield is to survive longer than the enemy, and so he's trying to make the battlefield more lethal for the enemy than for himself. And in this Enlightenment warfare, this linear warfare, the idea was to break the will of the opponent and cause a disorganized retreat, because that was where you would achieve victory on the battlefield, right? But something happened, a revolution in warfare. At about the same time that Ziad bin Isa founded Abuظbي, there was a revolution in France where the people threw off the monarchy. And very soon after that, France found itself in a war with a bunch of other countries in Europe that didn't like the fact that France didn't have a king anymore. And they said, no, we're going to reimpose the monarchy in your country. And so the French response was not to continue to fight according to this form of warfare. They said, we're going to change. And so they said, we're going to conscript the entire nation. Instead of having small armies in small battle spaces, they dramatically increased the size of the forces they had. They dramatically increased the amount of resources they had. And more importantly, they employed those soldiers in a different way. Instead of standing in a line, they approached the enemy in what's called open order. So they were just all over the place, right? They could use cover and concealment and fire at the enemy from a protected location. So what did that enable the French army to do? To make the battlefield more lethal for the enemy than for themselves. This is a dramatic change, and it had important consequences for warfare. In particular, two elements of warfare that I think are important for our discussion. The first is the level of destructiveness on the battlefield, right? How destructive is the environment? And the second is the size of the battlefield. And both of these things matter for the experience of the soldier in battle. So this first revolution in national warfare
was not a result of technology. It's a result of a change in human capital, a change in how people thought about warfare. They used existing technology in a new way. They organized society. They organized human society differently. And so what we see over the next century is our technological changes that are incorporated into this idea of national warfare. We have things like the telegraph, the railroad, artillery, different kinds of fuses, barbed wire, the machine gun. And that created an environment on the battlefield that by World War I, about 100 years ago, the battlefield became static. They had trenches dug that stretched for 750 kilometers, which is the same as the distance between here, Abuظbي, and Dammam in Saudi Arabia. Warfare had become, had stopped moving. But the size of the battlefield had increased dramatically. Now, how did this change? How do we get mobility in warfare once again? It was because armies thought differently about the technology they had at their disposal. They coordinated the use of artillery and armor or tanks and infantry in order to advance on the enemy, take and hold territory, and create chaos and discord in the enemy ranks. That allowed, once again, for the battlefield to be more lethal for the enemy than for friendly forces. And this change, this revolutionary change in warfare, is epitomized by what the German army called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, which is when they incorporated airplanes and radio in this complex of communication and coordination to advance. Warfare became mobile once again. So it was industrialized and mobile. And this is very important, right? Because it made the battlefield especially, even more destructive than it had been in the past. But what happens at the end of World War II? Another very important moment, revolutionary. That's the use of the atomic bomb on Japan by the United States. This changed the paradigm, because the natural extension of mobile industrial warfare at the end of the World Wars was we could go to complete nuclear annihilation. If we release that kind of destructiveness on the world, it's all over. No state leader in the world wanted to see that happen. Nuclear warfare was totally unacceptable because they recognized that that would be the end of life as we knew it. So what was the pressure for? What happened in warfare? There was an incentive for state leaders and armies to create a form of warfare that was at once less destructive, but still allowed militaries to achieve the political objectives they sought. And so what we saw is that warfare became more precise. So we had the development of technologies like precision-guided munitions and advanced sensing, where you could identify and find the enemy much more easily, much more quickly. We created a complex of communication and targeting that allowed, by 1991, the liberation of Kuwait in Operation Desert Storm, that allowed military to find, fix, and destroy the enemy with a speed that has been unheard of in the history of warfare. But again, this revolutionary change in warfare, where the United States and its allies obliterated the Iraqi military in a matter of days, this revolutionary change was not the result of technology. It was the result of how humans changed their human capital and used technology in new ways. this change in warfare was only possible because of the way we thought about the technology we had. But this again was a game changer. Just like nuclear weapons were taken off the table, were viewed as it's an unacceptable form of warfare, for many states in the world, especially the great powers, this new networked form of warfare was also unacceptable. So who would want to go toe-to-toe with America and its Western allies in this form of warfare? How would you win? So what was the reaction? The reaction of many countries was to avoid this kind of conflict. The Chinese, they looked at what happened in 1991 in the desert in Kuwait and Iraq, and they said, nope, we are not going to try that. We're gonna develop a concept called unrestricted warfare, where the battlefield is everywhere and omnipresent. And it may not be violent all the time, but we will be constantly trying to position ourselves for advantage in every aspect of life, so that if there is a networked warfare, a conventional conflict between us and, say, the United States, we will have an advantage. So this dramatically expanded the size of the battlefield. What did the Russians do? They said, we are not going to try to match the Americans and their allies capability for capability. But what we will do is we will create concepts and doctrines that allow us to sow discord and create ambiguity and mistrust in social and political institutions, so that we don't run the risk of inviting the sort of conventional conflict that the Iraqis got in 1991. So we see that warfare has become unconventional and informational as a result of two important revolutions in warfare, which was nuclear warfare and networked warfare. Nobody wants to fight those kinds of wars. So we're fighting unconventional information warfare now. But here's the deal. With the technologies that are on the horizon, technologies like artificial intelligence and big data, like the F-35, the most expensive weapon system in the history of humanity, like the Global Hawk system, like all the things you saw in the promotional video, all those technologies, those are technologies that allow the soldier to gain an advantage in conventional networked warfare. These technologies do not create advantages in the sort of unconventional information warfare that is undoubtedly going to become more prevalent. So this should be, this is both a challenge and an opportunity, right? Because no country that wants to maintain a political advantage can completely forego networked warfare. Every country has to maintain some sort of capability to employ forces and make the battlefield more lethal for the enemy than for their own soldiers, using the form of warfare that the United States and its allies used in 1991 in Kuwait. But at the same time, the focus can't be that form of warfare. Even though it makes for a great first-person shooter video game, we can't focus on that. In the future, we need to think about human capital. Technology will not revolutionize warfare. Just like it was human capital that revolutionized warfare at the time of the French Revolution and during the World Wars, in 1991 in Kuwait, human capital and how we think about how we fight will change warfare in the future. So I guess the moral of the story here is to think about how we develop our human capital in our societies. Let's consider, how do we educate our children? We're not necessarily educating children to fight, right? but we're educating children in order to teach them how to have trust in existing political and social institutions. We educate our children to understand the ramifications of what they do, to learn to be clear and critical decision makers, to understand how to make decisions on their own. Because the environment, the battlefield in unconventional information warfare is extremely ambiguous. It's uncertain. How do we get people that can operate with definiteness in that sort of environment? That's very difficult. This is a real challenge. Education is one element of it. Programs like national service in the UAE is another example of something that countries can do. It's a way to develop the personal discipline and habits in order to make societies resilient to the forms of unconventional information warfare that China and Russia and others are learning to use more and more of. Because nobody wants networked warfare. Nobody wants to fight a war they know they will lose. And so we need to prepare our human capital to succeed in unconventional information warfare. That's what the future holds. The future of warfare is not a video game. The future of warfare will require us to think smarter, better, and faster than any opponent we could have. And so if you're thinking, well, what do I do? How do I prepare for this new form of warfare? I think the answer would be to buy fewer guns and bombs and educate more children. And with that, I look forward to your questions.
Nathan for the electrifying start with a fantastic video game with Frank Underwood, as played by Kevin Spacey, and for taking us through the evolution of warfare from the battlefield to education. This takes me to the second fantastic panelist that we have today. We'll be having Dr. John Anthony Hardy, the Assistant Professor of Homeland Security at Rabdan Academy, the United Arab Emirates, who'll be talking about technology and its influence on the internal security. Professor, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great honor and a privilege to be able to speak to you this afternoon. I just want to start with a very similar caveat that anything I talk about today will be my own views. I'm going to mention some technological tools which exist in the world, and I don't mean to infer that any of these are things that are used by the UAE government in any way. They're just tools which exist in the world and are known to be used by open source companies. So I started off essentially with trying to think about key things, key things which I think are a challenge for domestic security here in the UAE. The first thing I started with was technology itself, changes to technology, how they're going to drive both sources of threat and also capabilities to work against those threats. I thought about opportunities, and I want to talk about some of the new opportunities that exist both for threat actors, such as criminals and terrorists, but also for security organizations as they start to adopt some of the technologies which are available or will soon become available to governments everywhere. I also want to look at some challenges that I think every country in the world is going to face. Every security organization that's domestically focused is going to face. And then look at some of the opportunities or advantages that the UAE has in meeting some of those. So the implications of adapting technology in the future. I have a few examples of some cutting-edge pilot programs that I want to mention, but I think right now these are not scalable yet and are still very expensive for us to operate. So in terms of technology, I think the first issue will be surveillance. And that's going to be both physical and digital platforms. I think probably the biggest game changer in domestic security surveillance was probably the invention of the Stingray device, which, if you've seen, is a relatively small device which can remotely access small computer systems and mobile phones. That kind of technical capability, I think, gave us access to a broad range of information that was never available before, and did it in a way that was fairly easy to train people how to use. I think that was a very significant development. New technologies in that space, I think, will only make it more accessible for security organizations around the world. I think anti-detection technologies have also been really significant. And I don't know if you've ever seen a small bug detector device, but for about $40 off of Amazon in a country that allows you to buy them, you can get a very small microprocessor that you can take with you to a hotel room, and you can check for cameras. I think if anyone's seen in the news earlier this week in South Korea, an organised criminal organisation was arrested for planting secrets, cameras in hotel rooms, and then paying for access to the live feeds. I think if that kind of thing persists, more people will probably be interested in these anti-detection technologies. So I think they're happening and they're becoming more accessible. Radio jammers and frequency jammers are another issue, particularly for surveillance teams where you're working against relatively astute enemies. Some of the adversaries we face in the 21st century are highly educated, highly motivated, and have access to the funding to buy fairly cutting-edge equipment to try and avoid detection by security agencies around the world. In the UAE, it's illegal to purchase a radio jamming device, but I think anywhere in the world with restrictions on this technology, one of the challenges is stopping people importing just the processor parts or the microchips themselves, and then having someone assemble that technology. And I don't know of any country in the world that's got a really good answer for being able to keep those things from crossing borders at the moment. I think another thing that we're going to look at is the proliferation of data. And that's individual data. Right now, people around the world create huge volumes of information. There are data points in every aspect of contemporary life. If you ever wonder, and sometimes my friends ask me this question all of the time, how does Google know what I'm interested in? Why do the ads always seem to know? Why does Facebook always give me an ad for something that I've been recently searching for? The availability of that data, I think, is probably shocking to a lot of people who don't work in the security industry. The availability and the permissibility of sharing that data between companies is becoming a great challenge for digital citizenship in the 21st century. Other issues like geolocation. I'm not sure if anyone remembers, but in 2015, a gentleman called Mark Taylor went to Syria to fight with Daesh. He was a citizen of New Zealand, and he posted a series of photographs of himself engaged in combat-like activities to Twitter, unaware that the data embedded in the picture, the EXMF data, contained geolocation coordinates for where the photographs had been taken. And he was very, very promptly targeted with a missile strike based on that geolocation information. I think that's a great benefit to us right now, but it's also potentially a challenge in the future if people find effective ways to fake or spoof that information, or to conceal it, or potentially to compromise the availability of that information. Another issue that we're looking at is metadata and data about entities that are non-humans. Things like cross-referencing vehicle identification numbers across borders, being able to cross-reference logs of where people have entered into ports or crossed borders internationally. There are new data types that are included in that as well. And metadata has expanded dramatically with email, with all different forms of messaging applications, with 4G, in fact, requiring or at least enabling, individual devices to contact multiple cell towers at once in order to determine the best signal. That's a highly effective way to get a very precise location of a device if you can access that information. Another issue we're facing is analysis. And some of the hot topics here have been behavioral analysis, things like pattern of life and activity-based intelligence. And if you're not familiar with the terms, pattern of life analysis is based on building a comprehensive picture of a person's routine activities and then looking for things which fit a routine pattern and deviate from it. And those deviations often tell us a lot of useful things about particular individuals or about organizations or groups of people. Activity-based intelligence is the next step. That's looking much more at patterns of behavior which are replicatable across groups of individual entities, most often people. One of the other issues we're looking at is machine learning. And one law enforcement agency from another country that I worked with was developing a machine learning program which can identify suspicious transactions which haven't already been flagged by a human operator. That's something that's still very experimental, but if it's successful, could actually have really serious implications for monitoring programs. For example, a pilot program which looked at ways to actively monitor open source intelligence on people who held visit visas. So the moment you entered the country on a visit visa, your open source identity would be passively tracked and it would look for red flags. Things like traveling to places where you hadn't declared you were going to be, or taking what we would consider suspicious photos of major attractions or symbolic sites. For example, if you turn up in New York and take a photo of the Empire State Building from far away, that won't trigger anything. But if you start taking photos of structural elements of the building, a machine learning algorithm will look at the metadata on your phone or look at the posts that you've made or the emails that you've sent and identify those structural elements as being suspicious. So again, that's kind of a pilot technology that we're not seeing rapidly developed, but if it becomes more available, that could very fundamentally change the types of skills and training that our people will need. Last point I'll make on that one is security and the difficulty of making sure that the data we have has high levels of integrity, hasn't been compromised or broken in some way. Maintaining information security, and I would include in that the very basic human element of operational security. Because humans are generally the weakest link in any organization, and a reliance on technology sometimes breeds complacency when it comes to operational security. I'm not a technical person, so the computer security side of it is something I would prefer to leave to experts on that. I'll quickly touch on some opportunities. I think tools are a great opportunity that we have available to us. They give us two key things and maybe a third. One of them is threat detection, the ability to find and locate threats that are occurring or are potentially about to occur. They also give us disruption of those threats in some cases. For example, some American firms have developed reasonably effective drone killing technology. The first instance of that is a type of almost rifle-like system that can effectively jam communications with an unmanned aerial vehicle in order to induce a crash if it doesn't have a stabilization program built into it. Another one is electrical interference, which should, hopefully in practice, be able to destabilize or switch off anything that's small enough and flying nearby. Another one is threat modeling. An example I have of that is a trial project to identify new designs for 3D printed weapons before humans had identified them. So that's looking at common characteristics of the STL or object files which contain the plans for 3D printed weapons with a particular focus on firearms parts, and trying to identify new file designs based on similar characteristics rather than human identification. That could present a great opportunity, I think, as a digital tool in order to identify and detect threats. Some of the information opportunities we have are new sources of data. And if you think, it wasn't actually very long ago that cell phones weren't very common. About 2 years ago, I interviewed the first person from New Zealand police who ever used cell tower data to identify, or to locate rather, a body after someone was involved in a crash and unfortunately wandered into the wilderness and was lost in the late 1990s. So new types of data, I think, are really useful for us. They also give us the ability to mine data for new types of information and to create preference clusters, which, if you've ever engaged in any kind of online marketing, you've been given a preference cluster, which is loosely based on Howard Muscovich's research on Campbell's spaghetti soup. Those preference clusters can be very useful in identifying high threat targets and differentiating them from low threat targets. And I'll give you an example, a software tool that was being developed about 2 years ago, last time I saw it, was looking at online behaviours of people who were engaging with radicalisation content. So it matched people who had accessed mostly Daesh videos that were designed to recruit people, and then it looked at their broader internet habits to identify the difference between violent radicalisation and essentially non-violent support of radicalisation. Because at the time, we're looking, in a national security context, you're looking at offences, and offences are behavioural rather than ideological. Certainly in the country I was working, you're allowed to think whatever you want as long as you don't hurt people about it. They're not enforcing what you believe. So the offences were behavioural, then the model was targeting behaviour. And it was looking at who was more likely to demonstrate a propensity for violence after engaging with extremist material. The biggest factor to that, if you're interested, is the socialisation of violence. So watching content repeatedly with friends is a very, very strong indicator that you're much more likely to participate actively in violence than to support it in a more benign way. Another issue we have is temporal, and the ability to monitor people in real time has become, only in the last 5 years, something that's viable for many organisations around the world. Rapid response to that is something that's been piloted, I think, very effectively here in the UAE. And data sharing opportunities between agencies and between countries, I think, are only going to multiply in the coming years. In terms of synthesis, the great opportunity and challenge is always going to be all-source fusion, is getting all of the different systems to talk to one another in a universal language. I think the opportunities for automating that process are many, but there are also significant challenges in that space as well. We'll move very quickly on to challenges. The first one is simply going to be the methods that we use. Some of the old methods will still work. Some of them are going to be much more difficult. There is a truth, I think, to the criticism of big data that it doesn't tell us that much that we didn't already know, but it does tell us what we already know a lot faster. To sit with an intelligence software and develop a network chart might take you a few hours. To sit there and read through all of the information and manually identify the same connections could take days or potentially weeks. So there's a significant advantage in developing methods for using technology. Our analytical techniques are changing and will need to continue to change. And I think both developing methods and training people in those methods is going to be an ongoing challenge as we become more reliant on technology and we require analysts to have a better understanding of technical skills than they already have, which makes me think I'll soon be out of a job. Another issue we face is purpose and fit of technology. I think there's a propensity for all organisations to focus on doing as much as you can with technology and making sure that we invest in the right systems is a challenge everywhere. I'll quickly speed through the last couple because I've waffled a little bit too long. Some of the countermeasure challenges, operational security, that's us leaking for the most part information. Mostly it's not non-deliberate. The challenge we have now is the ability of adversaries to collect a huge amount of information about our movements passively without us doing anything wrong, and then to use that to build patterns of response times and response capability so that they can more effectively target us, whether it's for criminal purposes to avoid detection or if it's terrorists who are planning attacks. That's a great challenge and not one we have a great answer to just yet. Threat actor sophistication goes hand in hand with that. Education, training and resources remain an ongoing challenge. And counterintelligence. One of the greatest challenges that we've been facing in the intelligence world, looking at domestic security, is the increasing sophistication of threat actor intelligence collection. The way that the enemy intelligence cycle has adapted and evolved over the last probably 10 or 15 years, and the ability of astute threat actors to collect quite detailed target information and first responder information without too much of a hassle. Laws, powers and roles, I think, are a challenge. Making sure that they keep pace with technology and capability is going to be an ongoing challenge. Technology moves much faster than policy in most areas of the world, I think. And expertise, making sure that we have people with the skills and knowledge that they need to have to operate our new systems, and to also build a cohort with the experience that they need in order to operate effectively with high-tech systems. Let's touch on a few implications. One is the kinds of skills that I think we need to focus on. Some of those are technical skills, some of those are analytical, and some of those are what I would call enabling. That's the kind of skill set where you can understand both what technical people can do with data and technology, and what analysts can make or reason from the information that you get. I think one of our greatest challenges right now is asking the right questions and properly interpreting the answers that we get from technology. And I think improving our skills to do that in the future will be a great advantage. I think our knowledge, on one hand, it needs to be domain specific. We also need technical people, and we need advanced training systems that can put a lot of people with differing levels of previous knowledge and aptitude through effective programs so that they can operate our systems to their greatest effect. We need investment in human capital and funding, and I think there are some great advantages here in the UAE to meet most of those challenges, particularly a long-standing culture of innovation and a history of adopting technology both effectively and quite rapidly in order to meet those challenges. So I'll just conclude very quickly by saying I think the outlook for these challenges for the UAE is quite favourable. I think the willingness that we've seen from the country's business sector and from its leadership to engage with contemporary issues, to invest in human capital and skills and knowledge has been absolutely admirable. And I think that none of these challenges will be too great for the security sector in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. John, for your insightful overview on how technology can be the key driver when it comes to domestic security, especially the journey from basic technology to advanced ones and what it means for us in terms of the challenges and opportunities. We have our final panelist today, and it gives me a great honor to introduce Mr. Hamad Mubarak Al-Amiri, who will be sharing with us his views on the crisis management element in light of technological advancement. Mr. Hamad is the Director of the Information and Communication Technology Department at the National Emergency, Crisis and Disaster Management Authority, United Arab Emirates. Mr. Hamad, the floor is all yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بداية أود أن أتقدم بالشكر لمركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية على دعوته لنا للمشاركة في هذا المؤتمر الهام، ويسعدني أن أشارك بورقة بحثية عن إدارة الأزمات في ظل التغير التكنولوجي، آملا أن تحوز هذه الورقة على رضاكم تجدون فيها الفائدة المرجوة. الإخوة والأخوات الحضور، تعرف الأزمة وفق مفهوم إدارة الأزمات بأنها أي تهديد قد يلحق الأذى بالأشخاص أو الممتلكات أو يؤدي إلى تعطيل سير العمل، حيث أن كل مؤسسة هي عرضة للأزمات التي قد تؤدي إلى الإضرار باسمها وسمعتها. ويهتم مصطلح إدارة الأزمات بدراسة الأخطار المحتمل حدوثها في المستقبل وتؤثر على العمل، ووضع خطة لمعالجتها بشكل إيجابي. وتعرف الهيئة الوطنية لإدارة الطوارئ والأزمات والكوارث وفق قانون إنشائها رقم 2 لسنة 2011 الأزمة بأنها حدث أكثر تعقيدا من الطارئ يهدد استقرار جزء كبير من المجتمع ومقدرة الحكومة على القيام بواجباتها. إن إدارة الأزمة تركز على تحديد الأزمات التي تواجهها الجهة أو المؤسسة وتحليلها والتعامل معها والإشراف على الأزمات الأكثر أهمية ووضع خطط لمعالجتها. ويمكن تلخيص متطلبات إدارة الأزمات في كل من عمليات التخطيط للأزمات واستخدام نظام اتصالات مؤمن داخلي وخارجي، بالإضافة إلى التنبؤ الوقائي. كما أن هناك بعض المقومات الأساسية التي لا بد من وجودها لضمان الإدارة الفعالة للأزمة، وهي توافر المعلومات المتكاملة والدقيقة والحديثة عن الأزمة، استشراف الأزمات والتنبؤ بها قبل وقوعها بناء على قراءات وأسس علمية معتمدة، التخطيط والاستعداد الجيد والدقيق لمواجهة الأزمات، اتباع الآليات والأدوات الكمية في التعامل مع الأزمات. وتشارك الهيئة الوطنية لإدارة الطوارئ والأزمات والكوارث في إعداد وتنسيق الخطط الاستراتيجية لإدارة الطوارئ والأزمات بما فيها خطط الاستجابة واتخاذ الإجراءات اللازمة لتنفيذها مع الجهات المعنية المتمثلة في الجهات الحكومية والمحلية المعنية بشؤون الطارئ والأزمات. كما تقوم بعملية الإشراف على تطوير قدرات الاستجابة وإدارة الطوارئ من خلال التنسيق والتعاون مع الجهات المعنية، وكذلك فإنها تقوم بتنسيق أدوار الجهات المعنية عند وقوع طارئ أو أزمة. وقد عملت الهيئة على وضع منظومة متكاملة للطوارئ والأزمات قسمت إلى 4 مراحل. المرحلة الأولى هي مرحلة المنع والوقاية، وهي المرحلة التي يتم فيها اتخاذ إجراءات تهدف لإزالة أسباب الطارئ أو الأزمة أو الكارثة وتقليل احتمالية حدوث أي منها، وهي تشمل تقييم المخاطر والتهديدات ووضع الأولويات المناسبة لها واقتراح التشريعات اللازمة واتخاذ كافة التدابير الأمنية والوقائية من قبل جميع الجهات المعنية. مرحلة الاستعداد، وهي المرحلة التي يتم فيها اتخاذ إجراءات تتعلق بتجهيز الموارد والإمكانيات والخطط لمواجهة حالات الطوارئ والأزمات والكوارث المتوقع حدوثها في المستقبل، وتشمل إعداد خطة الاستجابة الوطنية وتنسيقها والتدريب عليها لضمان فعاليتها. مرحلة الاستجابة، وهي المرحلة التي يتم فيها اتخاذ إجراءات نتيجة حدوث الطارئ أو الأزمة أو الكارثة بهدف تقليل الآثار السلبية الناجمة عن أي منهم والتأكد من تقديم العون والدعم للمجتمع. مرحلة التعافي، وهي المرحلة التي يتم من خلالها اتخاذ جميع الأعمال والإجراءات بعد حدوث الطارئ بهدف إعادة بناء البنية التحتية المتأثرة وإعادة جميع أوجه الحياة إلى طبيعتها، وتنقسم إلى إجراءات قصيرة المدى وإجراءات متوسطة المدى وإجراءات يتم تنفيذها على المدى البعيد. إن إدارة الأزمات تحتاج إلى تخطيط مسبق، وتقسم الخطط إلى خطط للمخاطر المحددة وخطط داعمة وخطط لوجستية، حيث تمثل هذه الخطط أداة مرجعية تتضمن قوائم لبيانات ومعلومات جهات الاتصال الرئيسية ونقاط تذكيرية لما يجب عمله عند مواجهة الخطر. كذلك فإنها تحتوي على نماذج لتوثيق كيفية الاستجابة لكل أزمة ومن أمثلة الأزمات المتوقعة، وعلى سبيل المثال للحصر وحدوث كوارث طبيعية، وعلى سبيل المثال للحصر حدوث كوارث طبيعية مثل الفيضانات الناجمة عن انفجار أنابيب المياه أو الأمطار الغزيرة أو الأضرار الناجمة عن العواصف أو نشوب الحرائق التي تعد من أخطر الأزمات التي يمكنها تعطيل الأعمال وتدمير المباني والآلات. كذلك قطاع التيار الكهربائي الذي يعد من الأخطار المحتمل حدوثها ويعتبر أزمة، حيث يؤدي إلى عدم التمكن من استخدام تكنولوجيا المعلومات وأنظمة الاتصالات وتشغيل الأجهزة والآلات والمعدات، وكذلك تعطل أنظمة التكنولوجيا والاتصالات بسبب تعرضها لهجمات إلكترونية أو فيروسات تؤدي إلى تعطلها وعدم قدرة الموظفين على أداء أعمالهم بكفاءة وفعالية. وتعمل الهيئة الوطنية لإدارة الطوارئ والأزمات والكوارث على مراقبة الأحداث في المستوى الوطني عن طريق مركز العمليات الوطني، واتخاذ الإجراءات اللازمة لتفعيل وتنفيذ خطط الاستجابة الوطنية، وإنشاء قاعدة بيانات للموارد الوطنية على مستوى دولة الإمارات، وإدامتها وتنسيق إدارة هذه الموارد أثناء الطارئ، ودعم تنفيذ خطط الاستجابة الوطنية الميدانية داخل الدولة وخارجها، والتنسيق بين المستوى الوطني والمحلي بكل ما يتعلق بمنظومة الطوارئ المتكاملة من خلال المراكز المحلية الموجودة في كل إمارة من إمارات الدولة. وقد تم تصنيف الطوارئ إلى مستويات من حيث طبيعة ونوع وحجم ودرجة تأثر المنطقة المتضررة أو المنكوبة، وتحديد مسؤوليات كل من المستوى الوطني والمحلي وفقا لتصنيف مستوى الطارئ أو الأزمة أو الكارثة. وتشمل خطط الاستعداد والاستجابة لمختلف أنواع هذه الطوارئ. الإخوة والأخوات الحضور، أشار تقرير منظمة الصليب الأحمر عن الكوارث في العالم بأنه عند حدوث الأزمة فإن أهمية الوصول للمعلومات يعد كأهمية الغذاء والماء عند الإنسان، ذلك أن المعنيين بإدارة الأزمة سيكون لديهم تحكم أكثر عندما تتوفر لديهم المعلومات المناسبة والحرجة بشكل آني. ومما لا شك فيه بأن الكوارث الطبيعية التي لا يمكن منع حدوثها أصبحت هاجسا يؤرق الحكومات، وذلك نظرا لما تخلفه من أضرار كبيرة في الأرواح والممتلكات، الأمر الذي يحتم ضرورة الاستعداد لها والتقليل من آثارها إلى أدنى حد ممكن. وقد بادرت منظمة الأمم المتحدة ممثلة بمكتب الأمم المتحدة للحد من المخاطر إلى وضع الاستراتيجيات والأطر المناسبة التي تمكن الحكومات من تطوير أنظمتها في مواجهة هذه الكوارث والتعامل مع تبعات حدوثها. ويعد إطار عام سنداي أحد هذه الأطر الهامة التي يمكن الاسترشاد بها في تطوير أنظمة فعالة. إن إدارة الأزمات قد تطورت بشكل كبير خلال النصف قرن الماضية، حيث ساهمت الثورة المعلوماتية في إحداث هذا التغيير، ولم تعد جهود الاستجابة الارتجالية أو العفوية كافية للتعامل الفعال مع الأزمة، بل إن المفهوم الشامل لإدارة الأزمة يحتم وجود مراحل استباقية تكون هي العامل الرئيسي في نجاح جهود الاستجابة أو فشلها. وبالرغم من اختلاف مراحل إدارة الأزمة بحسب متطلبات وإجراءات كل مرحلة، إلا أنها تشترك جميعها في حاجتها الماسة إلى إدارة المعلومات بكفاءة وفعالية. وتتمحور إدارة المعلومات في اتجاهين، حيث يمثل الاتجاه الأول تدفق المعلومات عن الأزمة أو الكارثة إلى منظومة القيادة والسيطرة، فيما يختص الاتجاه الثاني بنشر التوجيهات الصادرة من قيادة الحدث إما إلى المستجيبين في الميدان أو إلى الجمهور من خلال أنظمة الاتصال الجماهيري بكافة أشكالها. لقد ساهمت التكنولوجيا في إدارة المعلومات بشكل فعال، حيث يمكن من خلالها الحصول على المعرفة واستخراجها من بين الكم الهائل من المعلومات، ومن ثم وضعها كأداة فعالة في عملية اتخاذ القرار المناسب. كما أن التكنولوجيا ساعدت في إيجاد طرق مبتكرة تساعد على إنجاز الأدوار والمسؤوليات بأسرع وقت وأقل تكلفة. وقد شمل تأثير التكنولوجيا كافة نواحي الحياة، وأدى ذلك إلى التخلي عن العديد من الطرق التقليدية التي كانت تستخدم سابقاً بسبب ظهور تقنيات أكثر تقدماً وفقاً للتطور التكنولوجي الحديث والمستمر في كافة المجالات. كما لا يخفى عليكم ما تمثله المعلومات من أهمية كبرى في كافة مجالات الحياة التي يمكن من خلالها إحداث الكثير من التغيير، ولا عجب أن يتم تسليط الضوء على هذا الجانب في القمة العالمية للحكومات الأخيرة، حيث ذكر معالي وزير شؤون مجلس الوزراء والمستقبل رئيس القمة العالمية للحكومات أن من يملك المعلومة يملك المستقبل، ومن يملك المعلومة يستطيع أن يقدم خدمة أفضل ويطور الحياة بشكل أكبر. وعند الحديث عن إدارة المعلومات فإن أول ما يتبادر إلى أذهاننا تكنولوجيا المعلومات، حيث أنها الأداة التي يمكن من خلالها إدارة المعلومات لتحقيق الأهداف المرجوة إذا ما تم توظيفها بالشكل الصحيح. وقد ساهمت الإدارة الفعالة بإيجابية في إدارة وقد ساهمت المعلومات بإيجابية في الإدارة الفعالة للأزمة، إلا أنها في الوقت نفسه قد شكلت تحدياً حيث أصبحت الأخبار تنتشر في وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي قبل وصولها للإعلام الرسمي، مما يسبب فتح المجال للإشاعات نظراً لتأخر نشر الأخبار من قبل القنوات الرسمية، بالإضافة إلى أنها تتيح للناشرين انتشاراً أكبر، خصوصاً إذا كانت الأخبار المنشورة غير حقيقية، نظراً لتعطش المتابعين لمعرفة أي أخبار تتعلق بحدث ما والحصول على الأسبقية في نشر الخبر. وتلعب التقنيات الحديثة دوراً مهماً في تطوير وتحسين الاستجابة الفعالة للأزمة من خلال ما يلي: أولاً، صنع القرار وإدارة المعرفة والتنسيق البيني والرأسي وإدامة الموقف بالأحداث اللحظية أو ما يسمى بالسيتويشن أويرنس. وقد أظهرت المفاهيم والأطر المعتمدة الحاجة إلى بناء القرار الاستراتيجي على المعلومة، حيث أن بناء الصورة المعلوماتية المشتركة يعد مدخلاً أساسياً من مدخلات عملية القرار الاستراتيجي ضمن المفهوم الوطني لإدارة الطوارئ والأزمات والكوارث المعتمد. وتساهم التكنولوجيا بشكل كبير في رفض الصورة المعلوماتية وبنائها، وذلك عن طريق: أولاً، الوصول للخطط والموارد والقدرات المتوفرة وإتاحتها للمعنيين بشكل آني. ثانياً، الوصول لقواعد البيانات المعنية بأسماء وأرقام المعنيين. ثالثاً، الوصول لعقود الطوارئ حتى يتم تفعيلها. وتعد رابعاً مصدراً واحداً للمعلومات، حيث يمكن لكافة المعنيين بالأزمة في أماكن مختلفة متابعة الحدث وإرسال الإجراءات المتخذة من كل جهة تجاه الأزمة. خامساً، توفر نماذج خطط معدة مسبقاً بالإضافة إلى إجراءات عمل محددة يقوم بها الموظفين لتفادي الارتباك أو الاجتهاد أحياناً، ولضمان إجراء صحيح ومعتمد، ولكي يعرف كل موظف دوره وما يجب أن يقوم به. كما تتيح التكنولوجيا للمؤسسة أن تكون استباقية وليست مستجيبة للأزمة، وذلك عن طريق ما يلي: التكامل والترابط فيما بين الأنظمة المعنية، حيث أنه يعد عاملاً مهماً في تسريع وتيرة اتخاذ القرار، حيث يمكن للمتلقي من وضع المعلومة في سياقها الصحيح، وبالتالي فهم ما يجري من أحداث واتخاذ القرار المناسب. يمكن كذلك للمؤسسات في مرحلة التعافي مراجعة سجل الأحداث والقرارات المتخذة أثناء الأزمة، وذلك للاستفادة منها في تطوير الإجراءات وتنفيذ التمارين وتقديم الإيجاز للمعنيين، مع إبراز الدروس المستفادة من خلال أنظمة متخصصة تعنى بإدارة المعرفة. كما أنه لا يخفى عليكم ما توصلت إليه تكنولوجيا الواقع الافتراضي من تطور كبير يتيح للمعنيين محاكاة الأزمة بكافة أبعادها، لتساهم في تدريب وتأهيل المستجيبين الأوائل في التعامل الصحيح والأمثل مع ما يستجد من معاضل في مسرح الأحداث. ونظراً لصعوبة وجود الأشخاص المعنيين في مكان واحد، فإن وسائل الاتصال الحديثة تمكنهم من إدارة الأزمة من أماكن مختلفة، وتساهم في توفير مجموعة من المعلومات تساهم في بناء صورة متكاملة وأكثر شمولية عن الحدث. كما وتساهم التكنولوجيا أيضاً في تعزيز عملية اتخاذ القرار، حيث أنها تتيح الوصول لمجموعة من الأدوات التي تتسم بالموضوعية. كما أن استخدام التكنولوجيا في إدارة الأزمة يساهم في تطبيق إجراءات التفعيل والتصعيد بشكل أكثر تنظيمي. إن ذكاء الأنظمة يستخدم في أنظمة الإنذار المبكر وفي التنبؤ بالأزمات قبل حدوثها، حيث تستقبل هذه الأنظمة الإشارات من خلال أنظمة وتقنيات الرصد المختلفة للأحداث أو الظواهر، والتي يوحي تراكم تلك الإشارات أو زيادة تكرارها في فترة زمنية قصيرة بقرب حدوث الأزمة.
أمامك دقيقة واحدة.
نختصر. نسلط الضوء في ضوء تسارع وتيرة التقدم التكنولوجي وزيادة حدة الكوارث. بدأ يتسع نطاق الاعتماد على الاتصالات وتكنولوجيا المعلومات ليشمل مختلف المجالات الحيوية، حيث برزت أهمية تكنولوجيا المعلومات كأداة فاعلة في إدارة الأزمات والطوارئ من خلال دورها في تثقيف الجمهور حول طبيعة التهديدات والكوارث والسبل المثلى لمواجهتها والتعامل معها، ورصد الواقع العملي، وجمع ونشر المعلومات حول المناطق المتأثرة، وإبلاغ الجهات المعنية ومؤسسات الإغاثة بالاحتياجات العامة والخاصة، والاطلاع على مدى الجاهزية والقدرة على الاستجابة للكوارث الطبيعية وغيرها. وفي الختام أود أن أشير إلى أن دولة الإمارات وقيادتها الرشيدة قد خطت خطوات واسعة في كافة المجالات، وخير دليل على ذلك المراتب المتقدمة التي أحرزتها في أغلب المؤشرات الدولية التي تعنى بالحفاظ على أمن وسلامة الأفراد وتحقيق التنمية المستدامة. كما أن الهيئة الوطنية لإدارة الطوارئ والأزمات والكوارث تعمل جنبا إلى جنب مع مكتب الأمم المتحدة للحد من المخاطر الكوارث في تطبيق إطار عام سنداي. كما أنها تعمل أيضا على توحيد جهود الاستجابة تحت مظلة واحدة تساهم بفعالية ووفق استراتيجية معتمدة وموحدة لتحقيق الاستجابة المثلى تجاه أي طارئ أو أزمة لا سمح الله. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الشكر موصول لكم سيدي على هذا الطرح المنظم والمفصل لدور التقنية في إدارة الأزمات والكوارث. We've reached the end of our discussion of the three panelists, and I would like to open the floor for a maximum of 3 questions before we end the session for today. I kindly request that you raise your hand and please share with us your name and your designation and whom you're addressing the question to. The floor is open for you. The lady at the back, السيدة الفاضلة في الخلف.
السيدة الفاضلة.
Thank you. Ms. Ruba, and I represent the International Committee of the Red Cross. Thank you for the distinguished guests for their excellent presentations, very informative ones. My question is to Mr. Toronto, Nathan, regarding the new unconventional information warfare. Would you consider cyber warfare as part of that information warfare? Thank you.
Absolutely, it's part and parcel, right? It's about setting conditions for advantage, whether political advantage or tactical advantage on the battlefield. According to the concept of unrestricted warfare in the Chinese concept, right? It's ongoing and ever present. It's something we're always doing, and it's about creating advantage, because you never know when you'll need advantage in unconventional information warfare.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? I see a hand at the very front. تفضل.
خليل علي حيدر من الكويت. أنا ما أشارك بعض المتحدثين في تفاؤلهم بقدرتنا على أن نحصر الآثار السلبية للتطورات التكنولوجية في هذه المجالات. أنا أعتقد أنه ينبغي أن نشعر بقلق عميق، لا لكي نستسلم ولكن لكي نبحث أكثر وبعمق أكبر عن الحلول الحقيقية. أنت لما تقع أزمات معينة حتى في الدول المتقدمة تجد أن يصير ارتباك لفترة إلى أن تستطيع القوات الطوارئ والناس المختصة وكذا أنها تحاصر الآثار الجانبية للموضوع. وهذا يدل بأن يعني أن المستقبل ممكن يعقد الأوضاع بشكل أكبر. وبعدين بعض الناس اللي الآن يعني يشتغلون في الشركات أو يعملون مع الناس اللي مع قوى الأمن ممكن يغيرون مواقفهم. مثل ما نشوف احنا بعض الناس اللي كانوا يشتغلوا كانوا مستقيمين وكانوا جيدين في مثلا في بعض الدول الأوروبية أو في غيرها يعطون سلاحهم للجهة الثانية اللي تعمل أشياء سلبية في العالم. فما أدري إيش كيف المخرج من هذه الورطة. شكرا.
شكرا سيدي. Our distinguished guest, he is actually not sharing the optimism that you've actually reflected in your presentations, and he expressed some concerns and maybe complexities regarding the use of technology and security. If you can all comment, maybe we'll start with Dr. John and then with Mr. Hamad.
So in terms of reasons for optimism?
Why you're optimistic about technology and how to address the concerns that may be associated with it.
I think technology is a tool that we use, and I think it's just one of many different kinds of tools. I'm optimistic because I think there is, in adversarial things like domestic security or warfare, I mean, there are always going to be tensions between the people who innovate somewhere first and the people who have to react. Unfortunately, oftentimes as the government actor, reaction isn't much of a choice, it's just a necessity. But a lot of the times, governments have the resources and the availability of skills to, I think, make advancements with tools like technology, which allow us to outpace our enemies often. And I think the greatest advantage that states have is that individuals are rarely motivated by self-serving goals, which is a great weakness of organised crime and terrorist networks. Not always the case, but is often the case. A lot of people don't work for the government because it's the place they can earn the most money. Oftentimes, particularly in high-tech skills, the money's better in the private sector. They do it for other reasons, for a cause that's bigger than themselves. And I think that allows us to outpace often some of our competitors. So I'm relatively optimistic about the government's ability to leverage its skills and resources to stay one step ahead, although I'm sure we'll have setbacks along the way.
Thank you very much, Dr. John. سيد حمد، هل أنت متشائم متفائل فيما يتعلق بتوظيف التقنية في الأمن؟
We cannot be definite in this, as the gentleman has asked. Technology is open, and even in the information security, we have hackers, and we have people who are developing antiviruses and all of such stuff. In terms of emergency, I would say that if we the government has to be open into employing these technologies, and the rules has to serve the implementation of these technologies. Building capabilities. This is a very success factor in intercepting emergencies. So, and I realize that UAE especially has adopted a very newly models, as you all know, in the artificial intelligence. So it's a race, and you cannot stop it, and you have to join it. As you know, we were, a long time ago, we were receiving news through TV or radio or newspaper. Now the media, you have a dedicated unit in your organization responsible for media. Twitter, Facebook, social media. It has a very great impact. You receive the news from the field, from these media, even before the official channel. So honestly, even in information security, nobody will tell you are 100% secure. And the same goes with the technology. No one can say, I'm protected. We have to join this race and building ourselves, and we have to be well armed in order to face these issues.
تفضل.
بالنسبة لي أنا مش متفائل في الموضوع يا الرجال. ويشير تعليقك إلى أهمية التربية العلمية في مجتمعاتنا، وكمان احتمالية ارتكاب الخطأ في هذا الموضوع في استخدام التكنولوجيا، وخصوصا في المحاربة الورفير مرتفعة جدا، وتأمين ضد هذا النوع من ارتكاب الخطأ هو في الذهن وفي الاستعداد المخي يعني. هذا أهم شيء. أنا مش متفائل
لا أثق. أنا مخيف جدا الانتخابات في 2020 في دولتي في أمريكا. شو بصير؟ شو بصير؟ هذا بصراحة هذا مخيف.
سيدي، أنا أشكركم على هذه اللغة الجميلة، وإن كنت متشائما بخصوص التقنية فأنا متفائل بالتعدد الثقافي الذي نراه واللغوي، وخاصة ونحن في عام التسامح. أعتذر من الجميع حيث أن الوقت قد نفد، ولكن أتمنى منكم أن تستمتعوا ببقية برنامج اليوم، ولنشكر جميع المتحدثين الفضلاء على مداخلاتهم الرائعة. شكرا جزيلا.
كل الشكر والتقدير لجميع المشاركين في هذه الجلسة، وأود أن أشير إلى أنكم حضورنا الكريم ستجدون على مقاعدكم استمارة خاصة بالمؤتمر نرجو منكم ملئها. وإلى هنا حضورنا الكريم تنتهي فعاليات اليوم الأول من أعمال المؤتمر السنوي 24 تحت عنوان حوار أبوظبي تحديات وفرص التغيير في القرن الحادي والعشرين. وأكرر باسم سعادة الأستاذ الدكتور جمال سند السويدي مدير عام مركز الإمارات للدراسات والبحوث الاستراتيجية الشكر والتقدير للمشاركين جميعهم، ولكم أيها الأخوة والأخوات الحضور، ونلقاكم غدا بإذن الله تعالى لاستكمال فعاليات المؤتمر. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.